Chapter 229. Let's not talk about this anymore. I'm fine now, so wouldn't it be annoying to talk about it, right? Shi Fengju suddenly laughed again. Sang-won also laughed, and the confusion in her heart disappeared. She nodded and said with a smile, "That's right. It's hard to explain if you want to go into a dead end." After cleaning his wounds, she used a clean cotton towel to gently wipe them clean. Then, she evenly applied an amber-colored ointment. She slowly massaged the ointment until it was absorbed by the skin, and then wrapped 2 layers of gauze around his wounds. After carefully placing his legs on the bed, Sang-won let out a big sigh of relief. She was so tired that her waist was aching, and her forehead was slightly sweaty. She then went to take off his robes and looked at the wounds on his arms. They were much better than the ones on his legs, and had already formed scabs. She wiped them clean with a wet towel, applied the ointment, and bandaged them. "Let Steward Zhang and the others come tomorrow. You're tired." She raised her head, and Shi Fengju discovered that her forehead was sweaty and she was panting. He couldn't help but feel distressed. Sang-won smiled and shook her head. She softly said, "Those men are rough. Let me do it. I'll be more familiar with it tomorrow." Didn't she come all the way here to take care of him? If she still stood to the side and lazed around, instructing the servants to do the work, what would she look like? Shi Fengju was also happy that she was personally taking care of him, so he smiled and didn't say anything. He just thought that he would let her rest a bit more tomorrow. After finishing, Sang-won called for the servants to come in and take away the wooden basin and towel. Then, she helped Shi Fengju onto the bed. Before she could say anything, Shi Fengju had already ordered the servants to bring in hot water to wipe his body. The 2 women hurriedly complied. Once the water was done, everyone lowered their eyes and hurriedly left, gently closing the door. Sang-won suddenly felt a bit embarrassed. She looked at the large tub of hot water in front of the bed, and felt the steam blowing on her face, making her feel hot. "Won-young, do you want me to do it myself?" Shi Fengju chuckled and looked at her with interest. "I'll help you get a clean inner garment first." Sang-won finally found an excuse to get used to it. She turned to the wardrobe and took out a set of white soft silk inner garment. She placed it on the bed, and rolled up her sleeves to undress him. Shi Fengju obediently cooperated, but he did not take the initiative at all. He wanted her to serve him fully. Sang-won could not help but secretly roll her eyes at him. The embarrassment in her heart turned into annoyance from being teased, and she stripped him naked in an instant. In front of her, Shi Fengju didn't feel the slightest bit restrained or uneasy. Instead, he leisurely leaned back and brushed back a few strands of hair that brushed past his shoulders and hung in front of his chest. He smiled and said, "Won-young, hurry up. I feel itchy all over when I see the hot water." Sang-won laughed at his teasing, and the awkwardness from before lessened slightly. She quickly wet the towel and wrung it until it was half dry. Then, she unfolded it and wiped it for him. As the hot towel wiped his body, Shi Fengju sighed comfortably and closed his eyes to enjoy it. Wherever the towel passed, his white skin would turn red. As if the hot air had opened his pores, the familiar scent of him suddenly rushed out and hit her in the face with the steam. Sang-won couldn't help but feel a little warm in her heart. Shi Fengju wasn't any better. When he saw her bashful appearance, he just wanted to tease her. Who knew that she would come so close to him? Her warm jade-like hands and cool slender fingertips would touch his skin from time to time, making the blood in his body flow faster. His body felt slightly numb as if it had been touched by lightning. His desire rose uncontrollably, and he suddenly felt his mouth and tongue dry. He didn't dare to move. He could control his body to stay still, but he couldn't control his body's instinctive reaction. He was originally embarrassed, but when he saw that she was even more embarrassed than him, his embarrassment suddenly disappeared. Instead, he looked at her with interest, and the smile on his lips couldn't be stopped. Sang-won had long scolded him in her heart for being shameless and shameless. It was just a brush, but she didn't expect it to be like this. She really didn't know what to say when he was still thinking about it with a body full of injuries. If Shi Fengju knew that she despised him so much, he would cry out that he was innocent. This was not something he could control. If she wanted to blame someone, she could only blame herself. He was a normal man, and it would be terrible if he didn't have any reaction when she served him like this. Sang-won changed the towel. Her hands hesitated for a moment, and then she decisively skipped that area and wiped it down. Shi Fengju saw this and hurriedly said, "Won-young, don't. You have to wipe it." Seeing that she didn't speak, he begged again, "Good Won-young, you've done everything. Since you've help me thoroughly, okay? You're making me feel so uncomfortable." Sang-won raised her eyes and glanced at him. She could only nod and say, "Oh." She simply didn't hide it shyly, and wrapped the wet towel around it to wipe it. Shi Fengju didn't expect her to do it so suddenly, and was caught off guard by her provocation. He couldn't help but groan in a low voice, and his body trembled greatly. He subconsciously closed his eyes and frowned slightly. In an instant, his mind went blank, and he felt all the blood in his body rush to that place with a boom. The sudden feeling of swelling almost made him explode, and he almost couldn't hold it in anymore. He had been away for 2 months, and he was busy searching for his second brother. He didn't have time to think about anything else, and even if he did, he would think about her. He had always been clean. Although he often played around in business, he only drank wine, listened to music, and watched singing and dancing. In his eyes, no matter how beautiful the women in the brothels were, they had been touched by countless men. Just thinking about it made him sick, and he naturally didn't have the interest to do anything with them. In the past, Gu Fengzi was very strict with him, and no girl in the Shi family dared to climb into the young master's bed. Therefore, his wife was his first woman. Once he had tasted it, he would only remember her good points. He didn't realize it at first, but now that she was here, the two of them had been intimate during the day, and it had aroused his interest. Now, it was like adding oil to the fire, and his originally repressed control was like a flood breaking through a dam. Shi Fengju couldn't help but feel annoyed and regretful. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have come up with the idea of having her wipe his body. It would be better if he did half of it, and that dog-slave Chong Huan did half of it. He could see it, but he couldn't touch it. He deserved to suffer for it. What's wrong? I didn't use too much strength. Did I hurt you? Sang-won felt his whole body tense up. She looked up and saw him frowning with his eyes closed. She was startled and thought that she had accidentally touched the wound on his leg while she was distracted. No. Shi Fengju hurriedly said, "My back is a little itchy. Help me wipe it." "That's good." Sang-won smiled and let go of that place. She threw the towel down and carefully helped him turn over to lie on his stomach on the bed. Then, she wiped his back. When her hand left, Shi Fengju felt a little regret and disappointment in his heart. He actually liked that feeling, and couldn't help but want her to continue wiping that place. But when he thought about it, he felt that it was quite embarrassing, so he gave up. The body in front of her had a slender waist that was just right. His muscles were strong and clear, and his white skin was smooth and flawless. He was like a perfect sculpture with smooth lines. Sang-won had never looked at his body like this before. Plus, he was lying on his stomach and couldn't see her expression. She became a little bolder and stared blankly for a moment. Shi Fengju didn't see any movement from her for a long time. He couldn't help but turn his head slightly to look at her. Seeing her infatuated eyes staring at his body, the fire that had just subsided suddenly rose high again. He smiled at her and said, "Won-young, do I look good?" Sang-won's face suddenly turned red. She came back to her senses and wiped his body vigorously. But she didn't realize that her cheeks were as red as if they were dyed with rouge. Her eyes were bright and charming, and the corners of her eyes and the tips of her eyebrows were charming. Shi Fengju couldn't help but swallow. He turned his head and continued to lie on his stomach silently. He immediately made up his mind. After wiping him, the two of them seemed to be relieved. "Your clothes are also wet. You must be tired and sweaty. Quickly go take a bath." Shi Fengju turned back to lie on the bed. He put on his inner clothes and pulled the brocade quilt to cover his body. "Let me help you to sleep first." Sangwon said and went to help him. You take a bath first. I still want to sit down. Shi Fengju smiled and squeezed her hand. Sangwon smiled and let him do as he wished. After taking a bath, Sangwon came forward and said with some hesitation, Your leg is injured, so I won't disturb you. I'll sleep on the bed in the outer room. If you need anything, just call me. You're not someone who doesn't know what to do. Stay here. Look, I've already asked someone to prepare the quilt. Let's each have one. You came all the way here to accompany me. How can I let you spend the night on the bed so pitifully? Besides, I also like having you by my side. How could Shi Fengju be willing to let her go? He held her hand and didn't let go. But what if I touch your injury? Sangwon was still worried. Don't worry. Shi Fengju said with a smile. The bed is so big. We're not 3-year-old children. Sangwon smiled at his words and could only agree with a smile. She ordered Luya to sleep on the opposite side of the hall. She put down the brocade curtain, leaving only a small lamp covered by a gauze cover in the corner. She put down the curtain and got on the bed, crawling under the brocade quilt. As soon as she lay down, she felt Shi Fengju's arm reach over and hug her along with the quilt. Won Young, let's talk, okay? Let's talk tomorrow. Sangwon said vaguely with her eyes closed. Her heart was filled with anxiety. After rushing for so many days on the road, she finally managed to settle down. The moment she laid down, Sangwon felt sleepy. How could she be willing to move? How could Shi Fengju let her go? He simply lifted the quilt and wrapped her in his own quilt. He hugged her and whispered in her ear, Won Yang, we haven't seen each other for more than 2 months. Don't you miss me? After saying this, he lay down on top of her. Your injury, Sangwon was anxious. I don't care. But Shi Fengju saw that she was still distracted at this time and couldn't help but feel annoyed. He simply covered her mouth. Shi Fengju was finally satisfied. After cleaning up, Sangwon inadvertently saw that the gauze on his arm was bleeding. She immediately sat up in fright and said nervously, Your arm is bleeding. She hurriedly put on her robe and was about to get off the bed. Won Young, it's okay. It'll be fine in a while. Shi Fengju hurriedly pulled her back. How can that be? Also, I don't know if the wound on your leg has split open. If I don't see it clearly, I won't feel at ease. Sangwon insisted on getting off the bed. She turned on the lamp and looked at his leg. Sure enough, there were faint bloodstains on his leg. Sangwon's face sank. She hung up the bed curtain and took the gauze and ointment. She helped him remove, wipe, and apply the ointment. She complained, Look, the wound has split open again. I told you not to, but you didn't listen. Shi Fengju also felt a little embarrassed. He obediently let her do as she pleased and didn't dare to make a sound. He also knew that he had acted rashly just now. It was as if he didn't care about his life. His self-control had always been good. She also didn't deliberately tease or seduce him. But when he saw her, he couldn't care less. Shi Fengju secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, the wound had only split open a little. It would be fine after she applied the ointment and bandaged it again. If they had to find a doctor in the middle of the night, not to mention her thin skin, even he would feel embarrassed. But he didn't know that when he was thinking this, Sangwon was thinking the same thing. Okay, lie down and sleep. Does it still hurt? Sangwon said softly. She put the things aside after she finished treating his wound. No, it doesn't hurt anymore. You should go to sleep too. Shi Fengju saw that she was in a good mood again. He couldn't help but feel relieved. He held her hand and lay down with her help and covered himself with the quilt. Sangwon put away the gauze and ointment. Sangwon also got on the bed and gently lay down on his inner side. Shi Fengju saw that she didn't talk to him or even greet him. He felt that she was still angry, so he reached out and gently pushed her. Won Yang, Won Yang. Sangwon sighed inwardly. She opened her eyes and tilted her head to look at him. What's wrong? Nothing, I just wanted to call you. Won Yang, do you dislike me? Shi Fengju laughed. Dislike? Sangwon was stunned. How could she dislike him? Besides, what right did she have to dislike him? What nonsense are you talking about? Go to sleep. Sangwon didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Could it be because of his injury that this person became a little strange? Really? Then, come to my side of the quilt, okay? Wan Yang, I want to hug you to sleep. Shi Fengju was insatiable. She was by his side. If he didn't hug her, how stupid would he be? In the dark night, his eyes were as bright as stars as he stared at her, revealing a deep longing and affection. How could Sangwon refuse him? She smiled slightly and moved closer to him. He immediately lifted the quilt to welcome her. He wrapped her up and hugged her tightly in his arms. Wan Yang, I'll listen to you. I won't mess around next time. You still want to do it next time? Chapter 230. Lu Ye and the others had been waiting outside for a long time. Downstairs, Manager Zhang, Chong Huan, and the others were standing and sitting in silence. Seeing that the sun was rising higher and higher, and the temperature was gradually rising, but there was still no movement in the bedroom upstairs. Steward Zhang glanced at it uneasily and couldn't sit still. He coughed and said, "Isn't it time to apply the medicine for the young master?" "Save it. Manager Zhang." Chong Huan curled her lips and said, "Young mistress is finally here, why should we annoy eldest young master? With young mistress by his side, it's better than any elixir. You don't know, we were in a hurry these days and young mistress didn't rest well. She must be exhausted. Now that she has finally settled down, even eldest young master can't bear to disturb her. If we dare to go up and annoy her, we'll be in trouble. Anyway, I'm not going." Before Chong Huan could finish, Manager Zhang scolded her. He knocked her head twice and scolded, "Brat, are you itching for a beating again? Do you think the masters are made up by you? If you say another word, I'll pull out your tongue." Chen He and the others lowered their heads and laughed secretly. Chong Huan was sullen. She rubbed her head and sighed. She curled her lips and muttered silently. Although Manager Zhang scolded Chong Huan, he felt that what she said was reasonable, so he didn't mention going upstairs to call them. After a while, he saw the Zhong family and Master Wu coming down from upstairs. Manager Zhang hurriedly stood up and said, "Eldest young master, young mistress, you're up?" "Yes, we need hot water to wash up." Luya asked if lunch is ready. "We'll serve it later. Also, bring a pot of boiling water to make tea." The Zhong family hurriedly said with a smile. Manager Zhang nodded and gave the order. Everyone went to do their own things. After the two upstairs had lunch, it was already past noon. When the medicine was applied and the gauze was removed, Shi Fengju and Sangwon were dumbfounded. The wound on her leg was obviously red and swollen, and there were faint bloodstains. Their eyes met. Sangwon was slightly angry, while Shi Fengju felt guilty and hurriedly looked away. "Steward Zhang, quickly invite Dr. Li over. The wound on eldest young master's leg is not very good." Sangwon stood up and instructed. When Manager Zhang heard this, he also became anxious and hurriedly said, "Is it because of the hot weather these past 2 days that caused inflammation and fever? The old slave will send someone over immediately." Shi Fengju was mumbling in his heart that Ri Zhong was going to come up with an excuse to gloss over this matter. Hearing this, he was overjoyed and said with a laugh, "That's right, that's right. These past 2 days the weather has been too hot, I can't stand it. Get up quickly and call Dr. Li." Steward Zhang was a little puzzled. He thought to himself that this wasn't good news, but rather bad news. Why was eldest young master so happy instead? "Wan Yang, it really doesn't hurt. Dr. Li just needs to take a look. Don't be angry, okay?" Shi Fengju saw that Sangwon was sitting to the side and didn't say anything. He knew that she must be angry, so he held her hand and said with a smile, "I caused you to be so angry. If mother finds out, she will definitely blame me for not knowing how to take care of you and be considerate of you. I won't allow it to happen again." How could she not be angry? Sangwon was extremely angry. Steward Zhang and the others weren't really stupid. Just because they couldn't come back to their senses didn't mean that they wouldn't come back to their senses. If they returned and a few words reached their mother-in-law's ears, they wouldn't be able to escape a scolding. When Shi Fengju heard her say this, he felt a little disappointed in his heart. He sighed and said, "Wan Yang, are you angry because you're afraid that my mother will blame you?" He thought that she was worried about him. Sangwon was stunned for a moment before she came back to her senses. She frowned and said, "What are you saying? I'm naturally afraid that mother will blame me, but seeing you like this, how can my heart feel good?" "Wan Yang." Shi Fengju smiled. He held her hands and said with a smile, "I'm really fine. Don't worry, when I go back, my injuries will have already healed. Mother will be very happy. How could she ask about these old matters? Moreover, this pain is something that I'm willing to endure. It's really not worth anything. Don't take it to heart, okay?" Sangwon did not know whether to laugh or cry. Seeing that he had lowered himself to such an extent, she knew that she could no longer play with him seriously. She smiled and said, "Quickly lie down obediently and don't move. When Physician Li arrives, let him take a good look at you." Sangwon felt a little guilty. Dr. Li's medical skills should be good. If he really saw something, it would really make her feel ashamed. Shi Fengju didn't care. He lay down according to her words, but he wasn't willing to let her go. He still pulled her to sit beside him and held her hand as he spoke. It wasn't until Dr. Li came that he let her go and let her hide behind the partition. "You were fine yesterday. How come you're suddenly not fine?" Dr. Li rushed in. After greeting them, he sat on the stool that Luya had brought over and took Shi Fengju's pulse. He found that his pulse was beating abnormally fast. He slightly frowned and removed the gauze loosely covering his leg. When he saw the wound, he couldn't help but be shocked. "It's inflamed. How could this be?" Shi Fengju awkwardly coughed and vaguely said, "It seems that the weather has been a little hot these past 2 days. That doesn't make sense." However, Dr. Li flatly denied it. After carefully examining his wound, he stretched out his hand and gently pressed on it. He frowned and said, "Young master, did you do some intense exercise yesterday? Your muscles are slightly strained. Fortunately, your bones are not dislocated. Otherwise, you will have to reset your bones." Sangwon bit her lips and raised her handkerchief to cover her mouth as she secretly laughed. She thought, "You deserve it. Let's see if you'll still care about the front and not the back in the future." Dr. Li's eyes were full of suspicion as he looked at him. Shi Fengju felt even more guilty. He was quick-witted and smiled embarrassedly. "My wife rushed over from home yesterday. When she saw me, she was so sad and worried. I couldn't bear to see her like that, so I forced myself to walk a few more steps in front of her. I originally wanted to reassure her, but who knew that it would affect the wound? It really wasn't worth it. So that's how it is." Dr. Li suddenly understood and nodded. He sighed and said, "Eldest young master hasn't fully recovered yet. He must stay in bed and rest well. Otherwise, as the weather gets hotter, it will be extremely detrimental to the wound. Eldest young mistress is a sentimental person. You should persuade her not to worry. After all, it's just a superficial wound. He'll recover after resting for a while. There's no need to worry." "Hee, you're absolutely right. I should go back and persuade her." Shi Fengju nodded in agreement. Dr. Li wrote a new prescription and gave a few more instructions before leaving. Steward Zhang personally saw him out and took the prescription to get the medicine himself. Sangwon came out from behind the partition and looked at Shi Fengju with a smile that wasn't a smile. She couldn't help but cover her mouth and let out a laugh. Shi Fengju's face was no longer embarrassed. He smiled and gestured for her to sit beside him. He said with a smile, "Is your husband smart?" Sangwon held back her laughter and nodded. "He's really too smart. I'm so disappointed." "Nonsense." Shi Fengju smiled and pulled her into his arms. He reached out and pinched her chin. "It wasn't easy for me to smooth things over. You're disappointed that I didn't get to see the play. The two of them laughed. Dr. Lee's prescription was indeed effective. After the decoction was washed and the ointment was applied, the burning pain was immediately extinguished. It also made his tense body slightly loosen. Since last night, the two of them didn't do any more intense exercise. With someone accompanying him, Shi Fengju felt happy and contented even though they were only moving in this small space. He didn't feel the slightest bit sad. In less than 2 days, the first quarter's summary account books came from all over the country. In previous years, they were sent to Qingzhou, but this year's situation was special. Shi Fengju had already ordered them to be sent to Hondon. Sang Wan had also helped him look at the account books before. This time, the two of them naturally looked at them together. Sang Wan was bored of drinking tea, playing chess, and chatting all day long. She didn't refuse and looked at the account books with him. Her abacus was as smooth as flowing water, as beautiful as a butterfly flying through flowers. Shi Fengju had seen it before, and this time, he was even more infatuated. He couldn't help but hold her jade-like fingers and kiss them, causing Sang Wan to giggle. In the blink of an eye, more than half a month had passed. Shi Fengju followed the doctor's advice and was accompanied by his beloved wife. His wound healed very quickly. As long as the wound was treated at the beginning and stabilized, it would recover day by day. Today, when Dr. Li came, he said that he could slowly go up and down the stairs and walk around the courtyard. The gauze wrapped around his leg was only a thin layer, and the splint that held his leg in place had been removed long ago. The next morning, the wind was cool and the air was refreshing. Shi Fengju couldn't hold back, so Sang Wan helped him down the stairs. Outside the door, he stood on the green brick floor of the courtyard. Looking at the luxuriant leaves swaying in front of him, Shi Fengju took a deep breath and felt a burst of unfamiliar freshness. He couldn't help but stare at the ground and walk around a few times. He laughed at himself and said, "I haven't touched the earth for a long time. Now that I've stepped on it, I feel extremely happy." People say that the most ordinary things are the most valuable. Today, I've experienced 2 parts of that saying. Sang Wan said with a smile, "You've just recovered. Let's walk for a while and then go back to the house. When you're fully recovered, you can stay for as long as you want." Shi Fengju said with a smile, "I've been meditating for a while. It wasn't easy for me to gain some enlightenment, but my Wan Nyang didn't give me any face at all. She didn't even agree with me. She's just a wet blanket." Sang Wan rolled her eyes at him and said with a smile, Yes, eldest young master is right. It feels good to regain something you lost, doesn't it? Then eldest young master can slowly appreciate it." Shi Fengju laughed loudly and said, "You don't mean what you say." He then took her hand and led her to a cluster of pink and white peonies. He said with a smile, "Wan Nyang, look. These peonies are blooming beautifully. Do you like them?" Sang Wan's eyes swept across the courtyard. Only then did she notice that there were many large flower vats that were about half the height of a person placed randomly in the courtyard. Peonies of various colors were planted in the vats. At this moment, the garden was bustling with noise and excitement. There were purple red, pink, crimson, rose red, pinkish white, goose yellow, and so on. Some were of mixed colors and some were of pure colors. Each of the flowers was the size of a bowl. The flowers were bright and full. They were blooming beautifully on the green leaves and branches, attracting butterflies and bees. Sang Wan couldn't help but say in surprise, "Why are there so many peonies? I don't remember seeing this courtyard like this when I came here. Did I remember wrongly?" Shi Fengju tilted his head and looked at her. He didn't say anything for a long time. Chapter 231. Sang Wan was baffled. Being stared at by him, she suddenly felt a little guilty. Tilting her head, she tried to recall and smiled. "I really can't remember. Was it because these peonies hadn't bloomed at that time? How long has it been? They've grown too fast." You didn't see the peonies in this courtyard a few days ago?" Shi Fengju finally asked. Sang-won tried hard to recall and shook her head hesitantly. I spent most of my time upstairs with you. Even when I went downstairs, I only passed by them in a hurry. I really didn't notice them. She smiled again. If I had seen them earlier, I would have cut a few of them and brought them back upstairs. They would have been fresh. Shi Fengju said dejectedly. You really didn't see them? If I didn't mention it today, you wouldn't have noticed them? Wan Yang, I specially asked someone to search for them outside for you to admire. I thought you'd already admired them, but you didn't even look at them. Sang-won was stunned. These peonies, he specially asked someone to search for them for her? Looking at the slightly disappointed expression of the man in front of her, Sang-won suddenly felt bad, as if she had done something wrong. Fengju, these peonies are great. I like them a lot. Sang-won thought for a moment and took the initiative to hold his arm. She whispered shyly, I've been worried about your injury every day, and I've also been busy looking at those account books with you. How would I have the mood to look at other things? If you didn't mention it, I really wouldn't have thought about the changes in this courtyard. You've done so much for me, so I naturally like it. How could I not like it? Don't be angry, okay? Shi Fengju was only disappointed for a moment. Even if she didn't mention it, he would have thought of the reason. Hearing her say it, he was relieved and happy. He held her shoulder and smiled. I just said it casually. I'm happy that you care about me, so why would I be angry with you? Sang-won smiled sweetly. That's good. I was too slow and didn't notice the changes in this courtyard. As she said that, she found it funny. I'll admire them with you. Which one do you like? Let's cut it off and put it in a vase in our room. Shi Fengju hugged her and smiled. Sang-won nodded with a smile. It was unknown who accompanied whom to admire the peony in the courtyard for a while. She was worried that his foot would not be able to bear the pain, so she picked a red and a white branch and had them cut down. Together, they went back to their room. Sang-won turned around and glanced at the colorful flowers in the courtyard. Her heart slightly rippled, and she allowed Shi Fengju to lead her upstairs in high spirits. She didn't think that he would do this for her, and she actually didn't see it. She knew that he was really disappointed at that moment. His slightly hurt expression made her feel slightly guilty. She also felt a little flustered and guilty, so she hurriedly said something else to divert his attention. He could be extremely good to a person, and he could also be extremely bad to a person. She didn't know if she was lucky or unlucky, but she seemed to have experienced both of his extremes. Sang-won was slightly startled and was at a loss for a moment. By the way, Wan Yang, I have something to give you. Shi Fengju patted his head as if he had thought of something important. He pulled Sang-won upstairs in a hurry. Sang-won was so flustered that she stopped pondering and hurriedly said, Slow down. Be careful not to hurt yourself again. It's healed a long time ago. It's not so weak. Shi Fengju laughed and pulled her into the room. Wan Yang, come. Sit here and wait for me. Shi Fengju pulled her to the dressing table and sat her down on the embroidered stool. He turned around and went to get something. Why are you being so mysterious? Sang-won said with a puzzled smile. After a while, Shi Fengju came back with a red lacquered brocade box that was about 1 foot long and 2 inches wide. He opened the brocade box and took out a hairpin. He threw the brocade box in front of the dressing table and handed the hairpin to her. He smiled and said, Wan Yang, look at this crystal lotus hairpin. Do you like it? Sang-won looked down and carefully examined the crystal lotus hairpin in her hand. It was about 1 foot long and was sparkling and translucent, without a trace of impurities. There were no traces of splicing between the body of the hairpin and the head of the hairpin. It was obviously made of a whole piece of crystal. The body of the hairpin was cleverly polished into a hexagonal shape. Light reflected and refracted on it, showing a bright and dazzling light. At the head of the hairpin were 2 coin-sized lotus flowers with layers of petals. They were elegant and thin, sparkling and translucent, vivid and lifelike. It was as if they would tremble slightly when the wind blew. A 2-finger-sized crystal butterfly was resting on one of the flowers. The butterfly's wings were erect, thin and sparkling, and the veins were clearly visible. The two trembling silver antennae swayed from time to time, as if they were alive. The golden stamen of the lotus was made of golden silk. The golden color shone through the layers of crystal petals, showing a dreamlike beauty. From the center of the lotus hung a chopstick-sized crystal chain. One was long and the other was short. They were inserted into the hair and hung down to the ears. At the end of each chain hung a finger-sized teardrop-shaped gem. One was a translucent jadeite, and the other was a pure pigeon's blood ruby. The color was bright and lustrous, reflecting the pure white crystal, making it look even more noble and otherworldly. "Does it look good?" Shi Fengju put his hands on her shoulders and pretended to hug her. He asked with a smile as if he was presenting a treasure. "It looks good. It must be very expensive," Sangwon said with a smile. The hairpin in her hand was heavy and full of feeling. Not to mention the workmanship, just the material alone was likely to be very expensive. "I specially ordered it from the capital for you. Naturally, it's more expensive. Do you like it?" Shi Fengju said with a smile. "How could I not like such a beautiful hairpin?" Sangwon smiled, but for some reason, the smile on her face was a little stiff. The more he tried to please her and treat her well, the more she felt a little guilty. "It's good that you like it. Come, I'll help you put it on." Shi Fengju smiled and took the crystal lotus hairpin. He carefully looked at her hair bun and then inserted it into her hair. He held her shoulders and admired her in the mirror. He smiled and praised, "Wan Yang, you look so beautiful wearing this hairpin. It was worth the effort I put in to get it from the capital. That day when the ship was on fire, I was worried sick. Fortunately, I managed to get it out." "What did you say?" Sangwon's body shook violently and her eyes widened. She took the red embroidered box that was placed at the side. There were burn marks on the box. It was obvious that someone had rescued it from the fire. She then thought of the scene where Chong Huan swallowed her words and changed the topic. "It's all this servant's fault for not looking after young master. We were clearly out, but for some reason young master, it's all this servant's fault. When I wasn't paying attention, young master was hit by a falling pillar and fell into the water." Sangwon suddenly stood up and raised the embroidered box in her hand to question Shi Fengju. "That day, you were clearly out. Did you go back into the ship to look for this thing? That's why, Fengju, is it?" "Wan Yang." Shi Fengju was a little frightened by her expression and felt a little uneasy. He reached out and pulled her into his embrace. He leaned on her shoulder and laughed softly. "Aren't I fine now? Have you forgotten? When Big Sister asked you for that mutton-fat white jade hairpin, I said that I would find a better one for you. Look, this crystal lotus hairpin is better than that one, right? But you shouldn't have put yourself in danger because of this. If something really happened to you, I would only feel sad and guilty every time I see this hairpin in the future. Why would I want it?" Sangwon's heart ached and she leaned weakly in his embrace. She raised her hand and tugged at his clothes. "Fengju, you don't have to be so good to me, really." The way he treated her made her feel a little helpless. She was at a loss and didn't know how she could repay him. She didn't like the feeling of being pressured step by step and wanted to escape. She didn't know what she could repay him with. The better he treated her, the more frightened and alarmed she felt. He said that he liked her, but he didn't know that every time she heard it, she would feel unnatural. Actually, treating each other with respect and treating each other with respect, wasn't that a good thing? Everyone could live calmly, comfortably, and freely. But he didn't. Shi Fengju lowered his head and kissed her gently on the forehead. Hearing that she was sobbing, he couldn't help but be startled. He quickly let go of her and lifted her face. His fingers gently stroked the corner of her eyes to wipe away her tears. "Wan Yang, don't cry. You're my wife and the woman I like. If I don't treat you well, who should I treat well?" "Fengju." Sangwon's tears couldn't help but roll down. She lowered her eyes and shook her head gently. "Don't say any more. In the future, don't be like this again. Promise me." Okay. I promise you, I won't be like this again. Don't cry, okay? Look at you, I gave you something and you cried like this. Those who don't know would think that I bullied you. Shi Fengju smiled and wiped away her tears. Sangwon laughed and took out her handkerchief to wipe away her tears. She said softly, Fengju, I really don't care about this. I just want you to be safe and sound. That's enough. And mother, she won't be able to take any scares. Her words were obviously virtuous and filial. But for some reason, when Shi Fengju heard it, he felt a little disappointed and lost. What was he looking forward to? He was also at a loss. Don't worry, I'll be more careful in the future. I won't let you guys worry. Shi Fengju smiled. Suddenly, he held her shoulders and said seriously, Wan Yang, tell me, do you like me? Sangwon was startled. She raised her eyes slightly and met with Shi Fengju's dark eyes. His eyes were as calm as a lake and seemed to be staring at her with a little bit of nervousness and suppressed eagerness. Sangwon blinked gently to avoid his gaze. Her heart was in a mess. Although she didn't know why he asked her such a question, her intuition told her that if she answered wrongly, she would definitely annoy him. She nodded subconsciously and softly said, N. Shi Fengju's eyes suddenly lit up like the brightest star in the sky. His hands on her shoulders tightened and he said happily, Wan Yang, you also like me, right? And Sangwon nodded. She didn't dare to look into his eyes. She leaned on him and hugged his waist. He was her husband. She couldn't leave him in this lifetime. They were going to spend the rest of their lives together. She would naturally like him, wouldn't she? Chapter 232. Wan Yang. Shi Fengju hugged her tightly and rubbed his chin on her head intimately. He laughed with extreme joy. Wan Yang, I will treat you well for the rest of my life. I will never leave you. I will also be a good wife to you. Sangwon curled her lips and smiled faintly. Time passed peacefully and leisurely. This was what she really wanted. But now, she felt that she could no longer control her heart. After hearing his words, she was happy, truly happy from the bottom of her heart. Her heart also felt slightly warm. 7 or 8 days passed in a flash. After Dr. Li carefully examined Shi Fengju for the last time, he finally stood up and cupped his hands with a smile. Congratulations, eldest young master. You have completely recovered. From now on, as long as you pay attention to not get injured again and don't tire yourself out from walking too much, you will be as good as before after half a year. I will also get you 2 bottles of scar-removing ointment. You can apply it twice a day and stop using other ointment. Everyone was happy when they heard this and went forward to kneel down and congratulate the eldest young master. Shi Fengju was even happier. He personally sent Dr. Li out and ordered Steward Zhang to prepare a generous gift to express his gratitude. Of course, everyone who served him was also rewarded, no one was left behind. As for Sangwon, she was fiercely rolled around in the sheets by a certain someone who had just had his first taste. The process was intense and passionate. Sangwon almost did not know what time it was. After the lovemaking, the two of them slept in each other's arms after cleaning up. Shi Fengju hugged and caressed the woman in his arms who was still weak and vulnerable. When he lowered his head, he could smell her unique scent and body scent. He felt satisfied and happy. He only hoped that every year after this, they would never be separated again. Wan Yang, do you want to go to the capital? We are not far from the capital. Why don't I take you to the capital to have some fun? We also have several businesses in the capital city. Let's go there and take a look, Shi Fengju said with a smile. He had even prepared an excuse. The capital at the foot of the Son of Heaven was bound to be endlessly prosperous, graceful, and noble. All the people of the realm yearned for it, and Sangwon was naturally no exception. Shi Fengju continued to whisper seductively into her ear about the delicious food and interesting things in the capital, as well as the beautiful scenery to enjoy. His words made Sangwon even more tempted. However, even though she was tempted, she didn't dare to say that she would go. Shi Fengju had been recuperating here for more than a month. Although he had written 2 letters to tell her that he was safe, How could Wang feel at ease without seeing her son with her own eyes? The letter also reminded Shi Fengju to return home as soon as he recovered from his injuries. At this moment, Shi Fengju was so happy that he had forgotten about it. He dared to forget Sang Wan, but she dared not. Instead of returning home after recuperating, he took her to the capital for sightseeing. Wang would definitely skin him alive. Maybe next time. Next time you go to the capital, take me with you and we can go together. Now, let's hurry home. Although mother is relieved to know that you are fine, how can she truly feel at ease without seeing you with her own eyes? Shi Fengju was a little unhappy when he heard her refusal, but when he heard the end of her words, he was startled. He was still unhappy, but he couldn't find any words to refute her. Moreover, he knew that what she said was the right thing to do, and he had forgotten about it for a moment. That was why he said that he would go to the capital with her. Naturally, he was also worried about his mother at home. But for some reason, she was more considerate of others than of him. Even if this others was his mother, he still felt a little jealous. Wan Yang is really virtuous. She always thinks about her mother. You are a daughter-in-law who is better than your son. Don't you think I should respect you more? Shi Fengju said resentfully. Why was there a hint of jealousy? Sang Wan gently raised her eyes and glanced at the man's face through the dim light from the tent. She felt angry and amused at the same time. Seeing that he was angry, she naturally wouldn't throw a tantrum as that would only make things worse. She took the initiative to rub against him and wrap her arms around his neck. She smiled softly and said, Fengju, isn't it good for me to be virtuous? You have such a big family business to support. If you were careless and didn't think of it, I should think of it for you. Of course, I also want to go to the capital with you. We can enjoy the beautiful scenery and taste the delicacies together. How happy would that be? It's just that you have just met with a disaster. Shouldn't you go home first to tell your elders that you are safe and thank your ancestors for their blessings? I know you're also thinking about mother, but you just blurted it out in a moment of carelessness. Even if I agree now, when you come back to your senses tomorrow, I'm afraid you'll have to apologize to me and hurry back home. I reminded you first, but you said those words instead. I was the one who didn't know what's good for me. After Sang Wan finished speaking, she turned her body away from his embrace and turned her head away. How could Shi Fengju still be angry after hearing what she had to say? Seeing that her face was filled with anger and grievance as she pretended to ignore him, he felt that she was even more pitiful and cute. He couldn't help but pull her into his embrace and said with a smile, I can't win against you. No matter how I look at it, you are the one who is reasonable and right. It's not that you don't know what's good for you, but I said it without thinking. If you weren't reasonable, I'm afraid that I would have to go back on my words and apologize to you tomorrow. My good wife, your husband was careless and said the wrong thing. Your husband will apologize to you. My wife, don't be angry, En. How could Sang Wan really argue with him? When she heard his words, she chuckled and lightly punched his chest. It's late, let's get some rest. Shi Fengju held her hand and kissed it. He said with a smile, tomorrow, I will ask someone to prepare a boat. We will leave the day after tomorrow. Although it's not in the capital, there is an ancient temple outside of Handan City called the Lingxin Temple. It is the most efficacious. Moreover, the vegetarian banquet there is the best and the scenery is very beautiful. We must go there. I will take you with me tomorrow. This was good. They had been out for so long and stayed in this small courtyard every day. A few days ago, when his legs were better, the two of them would occasionally take a ride around Handan City. In the end, there was no point in looking at the scenery on horseback. It would be good to go out and relax tomorrow. Sang Wan nodded with a smile and said, okay. The two of them didn't speak for the night. Early the next morning, because they were going to the temple, it was inconvenient to dress too flamboyantly. Shi Fengju wore a moon-white robe with a bamboo leaf pattern and a belt embroidered with the same silver thread embroidered with a picture of the three friends of spring and winter. On his waist, there was a green jade ring with a long yellow tassel. On his feet, he wore a pair of light black shoes with a foundation. Sang Wan wore a long robe with a yellow foundation, green pine flowers, green clouds, bamboo leaf patterns, and red autumn chrysanthemum satin. She wore an ivory-white inner garment with a straight collar and a light blue pleated skirt. Her hair was combed into a simple hairstyle with 2 or 3 not-so-bright jade hairpins inserted. Her eyebrows were lightly drawn and she wore a thin layer of makeup. She looked fresh and elegant. It was a rare day out. Other than Steward Zhang, who was leading 2 servants to prepare the boat, everyone else was accompanying them. Everyone was happy. They called for 2 carriages, one for Sang-Wan and Shi Fengju, one for Lu Ye and her 2 daughters-in-law, and one for Chong-Huan and the others. Lingxin Temple was located on Autumn Cry Mountain, more than 10 li outside of the city. The towering buildings stretched from the mountainside all the way to the top of the mountain. The Hall of Great Strength sat high on the top of the mountain, surrounded by mountains on both sides. If the Hall of Great Strength was compared to the highest part of the back of a round-backed chair, the mountains on both sides were the armrests that sloped downwards. The terrain here was excellent, and it gave off the aura of a ruler. Standing in front of the Hall of Great Strength and looking into the distance, at the foot of the mountain, there was a flat and wide pastoral landscape. Further away, there were undulating mountains. The carriage stopped at the foot of the mountain. Shi Fengju helped Sang-Wan put on the veil hat and helped her out of the carriage. The veil hat was made of a material called shadow cloud gauze. It was very light and thin. Wearing the veil, one could see clearly through the gauze, but others couldn't see the face of the wearer. There's still quite a distance from here to the top of the mountain. There's not much scenery at the foot of the mountain. The good scenery is halfway up the mountain. Let's take the sedan first and wait until we reach the mountain gate before coming down. Shi Fengju said with a smile. At this time, there were already sedan bearers waiting for business on the side. Seeing that it was a young master and madam from a wealthy family, they didn't dare to surround them and shout. They just smiled at the side. Sang-Wan had already seen the sedan waiting for them. Although it was called a sedan, it was actually a bamboo chair with 2 bamboo poles in the middle. The 4 sides were empty, and the top was shaded from the sun. There was a thumb-sized bamboo pole at the front and back of the sedan chair, which could also be used as armrests. Looking up at the Hall of Great Strength at the top of the mountain, Sang-Wan felt a little apprehensive as she looked at the bamboo sedan chair. She smiled and said, "This won't fall down, right?" Shi Fengju smiled. Before he could say anything, one of the sedan bearers couldn't wait and hurriedly said with a smile, "Madam, don't worry. We have to go back and forth at least 3 or 4 times a day on this mountain path. We've never had an accident before. It's very safe. Don't worry. They're all used to it. It's very safe." Shi Fengju smiled and shook her hand. Sang-Wan smiled and nodded. Shi Fengju waved his hand and 4 people rushed up carrying 2 bamboo sedan chairs. They carefully placed them on the ground and said with a smile, "Young master, madam, please get on the sedan chair." Shi Fengju helped Sang-Wan to sit down and then got on the other sedan chair. The 4 sedan bearers said, "Let's go." They steadily lifted the sedan chair and carried it on their shoulders. Step by step, they walked up the mountain. Lu Ye, Chong-Huan, and the others followed at the side. As they walked, the bamboo sedan chair creaked slightly, scaring Sang-Wan into a panic. She tightly gripped the armrest next to her. After a while, she finally got used to it and gently let go. Shi Fengju, who was following behind her, smiled and said a few words of advice. He also ordered Lu Ye and the others to carefully follow at the side. Sang-Wan calmed down and raised her eyes to look at the surrounding scenery. The mountain was verdant and lush, and there were many kinds of vigorous pine trees. From time to time, she could hear birds chirping as they flew past. She could even faintly hear the roar of the water. Below her feet and around her were all kinds of unknown wildflowers. The stars were blooming beautifully. The mountain breeze blew past, bringing with it the unique fragrance of pine needles. It penetrated the heart and refreshed the mind. The sun shone through the thin layer of clouds, and the blue sky was pure and high. It was indeed a very good day to go out. After walking for about half an hour, they entered the first stone gate built with huge stones. On the stone plateau behind the stone gate, Shi Fengju called out, "Stop." The sedan bearers steadied themselves and carefully lowered the sedan chair. Chapter 233. Shi Fengju got down from the bamboo sedan and went to help Sang Wan. He smiled and said, "I didn't scare you, did I?" Sang Wan shook her head and said with a smile, "I was a little nervous at first, but after I calmed down, I felt that it was quite interesting." Shi Fengju chuckled and led her up the mountain. He said, "There are also sedan chairs on the mountain. When we go down the mountain, we can just sit down. We can go up slowly now, there's no need to rush. The scenery on this mountain is quite good. Not far ahead, there's an extremely high waterfall. It just so happens that today isn't the 1st or 15th day of the new year, and it's also not a holiday. Not many people come here, so it's really convenient for us." Sang Wan naturally agreed with a smile and walked slowly with him. Shi Fengju didn't want Chong Huan and the others to follow, so he ordered them to go up the mountain first to reserve a vegetarian feast. Luya raised the box in her hand and said, "Eldest young master, eldest young mistress, let this servant follow. Maybe eldest young master and eldest young mistress are thirsty and want to drink tea." When it came to being considerate and attentive, even 10 Luya couldn't compare to 1 Chong Huan. Shi Fengju sometimes hated Luya so much that he couldn't say anything. He didn't know if Luya was really muddle-headed or just pretending to be muddle-headed. He didn't know what to say, but Chong Huan had already whispered to Luya, but just enough for Shi Fengju and Sang Wan to hear, "Stupid. Eldest young master clearly doesn't want anyone to disturb you, but you still want to follow. This is easy to handle. Why do you have to follow behind? Can't you walk far ahead and wait? Eldest young master and eldest young mistress will call you if they want to drink tea." When Luya heard this, she raised her head and looked at Shi Fengju with her dark eyes, as if asking him, "Is that so?" Shi Fengju was the master, after all, so it wasn't appropriate for him to say something too explicit in front of the servants. Seeing Luya looking at him so openly, he didn't know how to respond. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. What a blockhead. Chong Huan, that dog, was more attentive than her. Unfortunately, she wasn't a girl. Sang Wan held back her laughter and said to Luya, "What are you waiting for? Let's go. Wait at the second Dao mountain gate." "Yes, Ma'am." After Luya heard this, she walked forward with Chong Huan and the others. She thought to herself that young mistress was still the best. She spoke clearly and clearly. There was no one around, so Shi Fengju held Sang Wan's hand and walked slowly, pointing out the scenery along the way. The two of them talked and laughed intimately. Seeing the lavender irises on the side of the road, which were blooming brightly, Sang Wan praised them. Shi Fengju picked one and carefully put it in her hair. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. When they arrived at the waterfall, the two of them leaned on the railing and admired it for a while. They watched the white waterfall whizzing down from the high cliff, hitting the deep green pool below their feet, and then flowing out along the stream. The fragmented fog and cool air hit them in the face. The surrounding grass, leaves, and trees were baptized and spotless. It was incomparably bright and lush. Between the surrounding mountains and the lush green hills, it was even more serene and refined. At this point, all their worries were forgotten, as if they were out of this world. The master here is very lucky to have chosen such a good place to build a temple. Who knows how many people are envious? Sang Wan couldn't help but praise with a smile. Shi Fengju smiled and said, "Wan Nyang, do you like waterfalls? We also have some in the mountains of Qingzhou. When we go back, I'll ask someone to find a good place. We can also build a village on the mountain, plant flowers and trees everywhere, and raise 2 pairs of red-crowned cranes and cicadeer. When we are free, we can go there and stay for a few days. What do you think?" Sang Wan was speechless for a moment and looked at him in a daze. "Is that okay, Wan Nyang?" Shi Fengju smiled and raised his hand to tidy up her hair that was messed up by the mountain wind. He approached her and said, "Okay, of course it's okay." Sangwon tried her best not to look embarrassed. She forcibly suppressed the words that were about to pop out of her mouth. If your mother finds out, will she blame me? Shi Fengju laughed happily and hugged her to lean against his body. He lowered his head and said with a smile, "You wait and see. I will definitely find you a bigger and more beautiful waterfall than this one." Sangwon smiled. She felt that she was really going to be unable to resist him. It was almost noon when the two arrived at the main temple on the top of the mountain. From afar, they saw a master with a snow-white beard and wearing a cassock, waiting with Buddha beads in his hand. Behind him stood several young monks in blue and grey robes. Sangwon was startled and was wondering if there were any distinguished guests in the temple today. Shi Fengju had already taken her forward quickly. When the master saw them, his eyes lit up. He walked over calmly and saluted with one hand. He laughed and said, "Benefactor Shi, long time no see. How are you? I heard from Chong Huan that you encountered a small disaster a while ago. Fortunately, you were blessed by Buddha and the disaster was turned into good fortune. This old monk is also happy for you. Then this servant is talkative. It's just a small matter. I'm fine now. Thank you for your greetings, master." Shi Fengju respectfully returned the salute and carefully took off Sangwon's hat and handed it to Luya. He smiled and said, "Master, this is my wife, Wan Nyang. Wan Nyang, this is the abbot of the Lingxin Temple, Master Ling Jing." "Greetings, master." Sangwon curtsied. Master Ling Jing smiled and did not dare to return the greeting. He said with a smile, "When did Benefactor Shi get married?" "Congratulations. Young madam is a gentle and virtuous person at first glance. She is a match made in heaven with you." "Hee, thank you for your auspicious words, master. My wife married in April last year. It has been exactly a year." When Shi Fengju heard Master Ling Jing praising Sangwon, he was happier than hearing anything else. There was a smile between his brows. He led Sangwon and Master Ling Jing into the temple. The backyard of the temple had already been cleaned up. The two of them washed their hands and faces, then came out of the treasure hall to offer incense and kneel down. After that, they entered Master Ling Jing's meditation room and sat down to drink tea. Sangwon saw that Shi Fengju and Master Ling Jing seemed to be very familiar with each other. The two of them seemed to have a lot to say. She was very bored here and did not want to disturb them. She found a time to get up and said with a smile that she wanted to visit the temple. She asked the two of them to help themselves. Shi Fengju knew what she meant, so he did not stop her. He only smiled and told her to be careful and not to leave the temple. Master Ling Jing sent his close disciple, Huizhen, to guide Sangwon around. Sangwon thanked him and left. When Chong Huan and the others saw that they did not need to serve them, they had already gone to play in the temple. Only Luya followed Sangwon and followed Huizhen to visit the temple. The topography of this place was excellent. Several hundred years ago, a temple was built here. During these several hundred years, it rose and fell several times. It was built and destroyed and rebuilt again, leaving behind countless traces and stories of legends for the later generations. This Huizhen was eloquent and had done a lot of research on Buddhism. In addition, he had the intention to curry favor with her, so he used all his skills to explain to Sangwon. Not only Sangwon, but even Lu Ye, who was at the side, was listening intently. "Madam, don't look at how bright the temple is now. You wouldn't have thought that just 4 years ago, this place was still a desolate place where wild foxes roamed. My master was merciful and rebuilt this temple and invited the true Buddha. Now, not to mention the 4 villages and 8 villages nearby, even in Hondon City, I don't know how many nobles and commoners have come here to make wishes, fulfill wishes, and worship Buddha devoutly to accumulate blessings." Sangwon and Lu Ye could not help but look at the solemn and majestic buildings around them. They smiled in surprise and said, "If little master didn't say it, it would have been hard to imagine that this Lingxin temple had only been built for a few years." In order to rebuild this temple, Master Ling Jing must have been begging for alms for many years and suffered a lot. Apart from the royal temples or the temples built by some local government officials, Most of the temples in the world were built and repaired by various monks by soliciting alms and donations. How much money and wood could be donated depended entirely on one's Buddhist cultivation base, reputation, and fate. There were so many palaces and houses in the Lingxin temple, so the cost was definitely not low. No matter how famous Master Ling Jing was, he would have to put in a lot of effort. Hui Zhan looked at Sang Wan in surprise and said, "Madam, don't you know? Our Lingxin temple was rebuilt with young Master She's money. Everyone in our temple is extremely grateful to young Master She." "Is there such a thing? I really didn't know." Sang Wan was shocked. Shi Fengju did not tell her that he was the one who paid for the reconstruction of the Lingxin temple. Luya clapped her hands and said with a smile, "No wonder Master Ling Jing and my young master are so familiar. It turns out that they have known each other for a long time. Master Ling Jing really has good taste. It's right to ask my young master for alms. Not to mention one Lingxin temple, even 10 Lingxin temples would not be a problem." "Luya." Sang Wan saw that Luya did not cover her mouth and turned her head to look at her, indicating for her to shut up. Hui Zhan did not notice anything and said with a smile, "Miss, you are wrong. My master did not ask young Master She for alms." "That's strange. Could it be that our young master took the initiative to come to you? You are so far away from Qingzhou. It's impossible. If you are in Qingzhou, then it's more like it." Luya said again. "That's not it." Hui Zhan smiled with a good temper and said, "Speaking of which, we deserve to be unlucky. Ever since Master chose this place to make an oath to rebuild, we have been begging for alms outside. After 5 years, we barely managed to gather enough money. That day, when we were almost done calculating, we rushed back to try to build it as soon as possible. Who knew that the marshal uncle in charge of the accounts would accidentally lose the bag with the banknotes? When we went back to look for it, there was no trace of it. Everyone was so anxious that they wanted to hang themselves. Marshal uncle even cried out loud and wanted to jump into the river to commit suicide. Coincidentally, we met young Master She's convoy. Young Master asked about the situation and agreed that he would pay for the reconstruction. He asked us to return to the mountain first. Then, he sent someone to deliver the banknotes. We originally thought that he was joking, but since things had come to this, we could only listen to him and return to the mountain first. Unexpectedly, before we returned to the mountain, we met the people sent by young Master She at the foot of the mountain. They were riding horses, so naturally, they were faster than us. At that time, they gave us 80,000 in banknotes, which almost scared us. Hui Zhan said as if he remembered the scene at that time. He smiled and sighed, "Madam, I'm not afraid of being laughed at, but we were really dumbfounded at that time. Until the master who gave the banknotes left, we still did not come back to our senses. We could not believe that it was true." Luya smiled. "Then after that, this Lingxin temple was built?" "Yes," Hui Zhen nodded and smiled. "With enough money in hand, all kinds of materials were quickly bought. Many villagers nearby came to help. It took more than a year to build the main hall, and the rest were slowly built. Master originally wanted to return it to young Master She, but young Master She didn't accept it. Master then built a school at the foot of the mountain and hired a teacher to teach the children in the nearby villages to read and write for free. The remaining money was used to purchase thousands of mu of fertile land. Every year, the harvest from the land was used to pay for the expenses of the temple and the school. Every winter, we would set up a porridge stall to distribute porridge to the poor, give cotton clothes and blankets to the poor, repair bridges and roads, and do a lot of good deeds. Today, our temple's reputation can be said to be known by everyone in Hondon. Chapter 234. Reverend truly has the heart of a bodhisattva, truly admirable. Sang Wan couldn't help but put her palms together in admiration. Hui Zhen hurriedly put her palms together in greeting and said, "A monk should be merciful. Master often teaches us this. It's rare for young Master She to be so kind and charitable. You are a true philanthropist. Our entire temple is grateful." While they were talking, they suddenly heard Shi Fengju calling out with a smile, "Wan Yang." He walked over from behind. Huijin hurriedly retreated to the side and greeted, "Benefactor Shi." Shi Fengju nodded and smiled, "Thank you for your trouble, young master." "Young master, please go." Huijin bowed and excused herself. Luya was also smart for once. Without waiting for Shi Fengju to speak, she took the initiative and said, "This servant will also take her leave." Saying so, she hurriedly left. Sangwon laughed and joked to Shi Fengju, "This girl is too honest. She is far worse than your Chong Huan. Don't glare at her in the future. If you glare at her a few more times, she will become even more stupid." Shi Fengju laughed. "When did I glare at her? You are protecting her. Sometimes I am a little confused. Is she really stupid or is she pretending to be stupid? You said she is stupid? Humph, if she is stupid, why would she help you with the accounts? I see that her abacus is quite smooth and she can read quite a few words. She just doesn't understand." Sangwon laughed. "She just doesn't understand. Don't scare her any more." Shi Fengju helplessly shook his head and pulled her with a smile. "Come, I will bring you to a good place." Saying so, he pulled her along. Shi Fengju pulled Sangwon to a courtyard. In the middle of the courtyard, there was a very tall tree with lush leaves. Countless red ribbons hung down from the tree. Not far from the tree, there was a copper incense burner that was half the height of a person. Inside the copper incense burner, densely packed with incense stalks, was placed. "What is this?" Sangwon asked curiously. Countless red ribbons swayed in the wind amidst the lush foliage of the trees. Red and green intertwined, giving off a unique flavor. Shi Fengju said with a smile, "This old camphor tree is said to be more than 100 years old. If you make a wish in front of it and write it on a red ribbon, as long as you throw it on the tree and it doesn't fall down, your wish will come true. The higher you throw it, the more effective it will be. Many people will give it a try. Wan Yang, let's give it a try." Sangwon's gaze swept across the room. Sure enough, there was a long table on the side. On the table, there was a brush, ink, and inkstone. At one end of the table, there was a half-old vermilion wooden box with a crack on the top. Next to the wooden box, there was a red ribbon that hung neatly in front of the table. It was cut to 2 inches wide and 2 feet long. At one end, there was a small bag. There should be something inside, otherwise, how could it be thrown up so easily? Sangwon smiled and said, "Didn't you make a wish before you came here?" Shi Fengju suddenly felt a little guilty. After the completion of the Lingxin temple, he would come here every time he passed by Handon. Firstly, he was greedy to see the scenery of the mountain. Secondly, Master Ling Jing's words were not ordinary and were worth making friends with. Listening to his enlightenment often made him feel enlightened, as if all the troubles in the mortal world were gone. Thirdly, the vegetarian food in the temple was personally made by Master Ling Jing's junior brother, Master Ling Qing. It was incomparably delicious and was now famous in the entire Handon city. This great Master Ling Qing had a rule, which was that he would only cook 3 times a month, once every 10 days. He was the only exception. Every time he came, great Master Ling Qing would cook happily. Shi Fengju felt guilty because after he heard the legend, the first thing he thought of was his forced engagement. His biggest wish was, of course, to cancel the engagement. At that time, there was really no other way. He had to make a Hail Mary effort. That day, when he came here, he almost reached out his hand. Suddenly, he felt that his wish was a little unrealistic. After hesitating, he could no longer reach out his hand. At this moment, when he heard Sangwon ask, although she did not know, he felt quite embarrassed facing his own heart. "No, I came here to chat with Master Ling Jing. After eating the vegetarian food, I left. How could I have time to do this?" Shi Fengju coughed and quickly said. Sangwon did not doubt him. She smiled and said, "Since it's so effective, let's give it a try. I wonder what young master's wish is?" Shi Fengju smiled and asked, "Wan Yang, what about you?" Sangwon was stunned. She could not help but ask herself, what wish is it? There seemed to be a lot, but there seemed to be none. She was stunned all of a sudden. Shi Fengju smiled and took her to the table. He took out a few bright copper coins and threw them into the red lacquer wooden box. He scooped a spoonful of water from the water basin and dripped a few drops on the ink slab. He ground the ink, took the ribbon and wrote on it, Shi Fengju and Sang-won will grow old together and be united forever. Every stroke of his was written very carefully. His elegant and light handwriting was clearly displayed on the bright red ribbon and reflected clearly in Sang-won's eyes. The black words on the red background could not be clearer. Through the eyes, they almost reached the bottom of Sang-won's heart. Sang-won was shocked. Suddenly, she felt a surge of moisture in her eyes. It slowly spread in her eyes, and the words in front of her began to become blurry. At this moment, her heart was heavy, and her mind was blank. He said that he wanted to grow old together with her and be united forever. At this moment, she knew that this man really had her in his heart. All right. Shi Fengju finally let out a sigh of relief. He put down the brush and looked at the words he had written. He held her hand and asked with a smile, Won Young, do you think my handwriting is good? He had only asked her if her handwriting was good. In his eyes, her heart was naturally the same as his. All right. Sang-won stiffly nodded her head. She knew that when she said yes, she should show a bashful smile, but the stiff muscles on her cheeks refused to listen to her. Instead, her voice was filled with a thick nasal tone. Shi Fengju also felt it. He faced her and gently held her hand. With a smile, he said, Won Young, I only want to grow old with you and be united forever. Is your heart the same as mine? Sang-won nodded. In a low and hoarse voice, she said softly, You are my husband. Shi Fengju smiled. His smile was like the east wind blowing over the hillside in early spring. Everywhere it passed, flowers bloomed. Won Young, come, come. Shi Fengju smiled and stuffed the ribbon into Sang-won's hand. He pulled her to stand beside the tree. Sang-won was startled. She felt a little nervous for no reason. It seemed that success or failure could really determine their future. Won Young, come, I believe you can do it. Shi Fengju smiled excitedly. He looked up and squinted at the red ribbon floating all over the tree. Then, I'll try. Sang-won took 2 steps back. She looked up and used all her strength to throw it up. Both of their gazes shifted towards the red ribbon that was being tossed upwards. Even Shi Fengju could not help but feel a little nervous as he tightened his grip on her hand. Sang-won exclaimed in disappointment. She saw that the red ribbon did not even touch the edge of the tree. Her strength was too weak, and the distance she retreated was too far. Before the red ribbon touched the tree, it began to fall. Although it fell very slowly, it was still falling. It was destined that it would not even touch the edge of a leaf. Sang-won was secretly disappointed. At the same time, she glanced at Shi Fengju guiltily. She really did not do it on purpose. Perhaps her thoughts were not pure, and even God could not stand it. Won Young, look. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew. The red ribbon was blown forward and just happened to hang on a tree branch. It swayed steadily with the wind. Shi Fengju was so happy that he hurriedly called out to Sang-won. Sang-won looked up and was very happy. She pulled Shi Fengju's arm and said happily, It's hanging on the tree. Fengju. I knew you would be able to do it. This is God's will, Won Young. Shi Fengju was so happy that he hugged her and spun her around twice. Sang-won giggled and wrapped her arms around his neck. At this moment, her heart was truly filled with unparalleled joy. Deep in her heart, there was a faint hope. If she could be like this for the rest of her life, then she would not ask for anything else. Won Young. It was rare for Shi Fengju to see her smile so brightly. Her smile, which came from the bottom of her heart, was even more dazzling than the dazzling sun. He was used to seeing her reserved and gentle smile, and this smile made him like it even more. He held her face and lowered his head to kiss her. Young master, young mistress, Lu Ya's voice came first, and she stopped abruptly after shouting. She hurriedly turned around and her heart skipped a beat. Lu Ya pulled a long face and bit her lip. She seemed to be untactful again. Young master already had a bad opinion of her, and she really did not want to make him hate her again. But she really could not be blamed for this, okay? How could she have known that young master was so unrestrained? Even in a Buddhist place, he did not know any taboos. Wasn't he tired of it already? Although Lu Ya turned around, it was just a cover-up. Sangwon's face was flushed red, and she pushed Shi Fengju away. Shi Fengju's charming and gentle mood was broken. He frowned and cursed Lu Ya countless times in his heart. Stinky lass, wretched lass. Lu Ya, what's the matter? Sangwon asked. This servant is here too. You lass, how can you reply to your master like this? Why aren't you turning around for me? Shi Fengju saw that she was still talking to herself with her back facing them. He could not help but feel angry and amused at the same time. Yes, young master. Lu Ya hurriedly turned around and said with a smile, The vegetarian banquet has been prepared. This servant is here to invite young master and young mistress over to eat. I almost forgot. Wan Yang, you're hungry too, right? Let's go over now. Shi Fengju smiled, and the three of them went back to the Hall of Great Strength. The two masters, Ling Jing and Ling Qing, were waiting at the entrance of the main hall. They met and said a few words to each other. Shi Fengju thanked them again, and the two masters took their leave. They ordered the monks to lead the two of them to the dining hall. Chapter 235. A dish of emerald shrimp was made with tender beans and dried glutinous rice flour, egg, and seasonings as the main ingredients. The tender beans were peeled and cooked with oil. The color was dark green like emerald. After heating the pot with oil, ginger slices and yellow rice wine were added to the pot. The beans, sugar, salt, and other seasonings were stir-fried and soup was added. After the flavor was mixed, the vegetarian shrimp was added, stir-fried until thickened with starch, and poured in sesame oil. Red and green, the color was gorgeous, the beans were fragrant, and the shrimps were soft and tender. Although they were not real shrimps, they had a different flavor when eaten. A dish of luojiang tofu chicken was made with soybeans as the main ingredient. The soybeans were ground into soy milk and the dregs were filtered out. After boiling, it was changed to a small fire. When the oily skin was formed, the oily skin was picked up with thick bamboo chopsticks and placed aside to dry until it was done. The sesame powder, soy sauce, vegetable oil, and pepper powder were evenly spread on the oily skin. The oily skin was wrapped into rectangular pieces and steamed in a steamer basket. The various seasonings were soaked in the oily skin. After it was steamed and taken out to cool, it was cut into small pieces. Small pieces of uniform diamond-shaped pieces could be placed on a plate to form a dish. It was soft and dry, salty and fragrant, and was very chewy. A dish of ivory snow bamboo shoots was made with tender bamboo shoots and pickled vegetables as the main ingredients. The tender bamboo shoots were trimmed into 4 ivory shapes and blanched in boiling water. Wash the pickled vegetables and cut them into sections for later use. In the pot, peanut oil was added. First, scallions and ginger slices were added and stir-fried until fragrant. Then, the pickled vegetables were stir-fried. After that, the vegetable soup and various seasonings were added. Finally, the tender bamboo shoots were also placed in the pot. After boiling, it was cooked over a small fire. Starch was added and poured in. When the plate was arranged, the 4 ivory bamboo shoots were placed at the 4 corners. The tips of the bamboo shoots faced outwards, and the pickled vegetables were placed in the center. The ivory was as white as jade, and the pickled vegetables were green and flawless. It was simple and elegant, fresh and fragrant. In addition, there were also slices of bell meat, lotus leaf meat, shredded chowder, 3 delicacies fish maw, osmantha scallops, chicken tofu pudding, crystal duck cubes, pigeon eggs, fresh mushroom chicken slices, lotus flower out of water, drunken winter bamboo shoots, chrysanthemum flower with spring, stir-fried golden needles, smoked pine nuts tofu coat, and so on, all with different names. but they were all made with vegetarian ingredients. Shi Fengju obviously knew a lot about these dishes, so he was able to explain each dish to Sang Wan. Although Sang Wan had been to the temple several times before, the vegetarian dishes she had eaten were only stir-fried cabbage, green vegetables, and tofu. Seeing the dishes, she was full of praise. The two of them enjoyed the vegetarian feast very much. Even Lu Ye and the rest were able to enjoy a rare delicacy. After finishing the vegetarian feast, the sun was already setting in the west. The two of them bid farewell and went down the mountain. Nothing happened the night at the inn. The next morning, after breakfast, they took a carriage to the pier and boarded a boat to Qingzhou. Even if it's a little slower, it won't take too much time. We don't have to rush. Let's stay on the shore every night when we reach the pier. Just leave 2 or 3 people to watch the boat. Shi Fengju said. That was exactly what Sang Wan wanted. Although it was unlikely that she would be so unlucky as to encounter such a rare occurrence twice in such a short period of time, it was never wrong to be more careful. Thus, she agreed with a smile. At night, the two of them took Lu Ye and the others ashore to stay on the shore. Shi Fengju had nothing to do during the day. He was very energetic and had almost nothing to do. At night, he naturally hugged and made love to kill his energy. Sang Wan saw that he didn't have the slightest self-control and was reluctant. He was a patient who had just recovered from his injury. If he went back like this and his body became weak, she would die of shame. Shi Fengju said half seriously and half jokingly, "Wan Yang, I've thought about it. We should hurry up and have a child. With a child, mother will have something to do. She won't have to think too much and cause trouble all day." He then smiled and asked her how Mama Li had helped her recuperate. In fact, Shi Fengju thought about his accident after the event. The more he thought about it, the more upset he felt. He thought that if something else happened in the future and he didn't even leave behind a child, how could he face his ancestors, his mother, and his wife? With this sense of worry and the fact that his wife was the person he loved, he naturally pestered her even more. Sang Wan felt that what he said made sense and didn't say anything else. She allowed him to reach out and undress her. Then, he hugged her and rolled onto the bed. Half a month later, the boat finally docked at the Qingzhou pier. 2 days ago, someone had been sent to deliver the news by land. The Jin housekeeper had already brought people to the pier to wait. When Shi Fengju and Sang Wan got off the boat, the Jin housekeeper hurriedly led everyone to greet them. "Eldest young master, eldest young mistress, you're finally back. Eldest young mistress and the servants have been looking forward to seeing you every day." When the Jin housekeeper saw Shi Fengju, his eyes immediately became moist. He couldn't help but raise his sleeve to wipe the corners of his eyes. It could be said that he had watched Shi Fengju grow up. When he heard that Shi Fengju had encountered a disaster, how could he not be worried? Now that he saw him, he suddenly felt as if a lifetime had passed. "I told you all to be worried. Aren't I perfectly fine? Let's go home." Shi Fengju also felt a little emotional and sighed with a smile. Yes. Eldest young master, eldest young mistress, please get on the carriage. Leave your luggage to me. I'm afraid that eldest young mistress will be anxious from waiting." The Jin housekeeper hurriedly smiled and led Shi Fengju and Sang Wan into the carriage. The two got on the carriage and drove towards the Shi family. Neither of them spoke. The Jin housekeeper's disposition made their hearts feel heavy. If the Jin housekeeper was already like this, one could imagine how worried Wang was. Shi Fengju and Sang Wan didn't expect that Wang, second Lord Shi and his wife, third Old Master Shi and his wife, Gu Fengzi, and Mama Li would be waiting at the entrance of the Shi family. When they saw them from afar, they hurriedly ordered the carriage to stop. "My son, you're finally back." Shi Fengju quickly stepped forward and lifted his robe. Just as he was about to kneel down to pay his respects to his mother, Wang Shi grabbed hold of him just as he bent down. She hugged him and cried bitterly. The crowd quickly comforted her. After a while, Wang recovered and looked Shi Fengju up and down. Shi Fengju hurriedly put on a relaxed smile and allowed her to look at him. Mother, look, I'm fine. What's fine? Your complexion doesn't look good and you've lost weight. Wang sniffed and said. Shi Fengju smiled and said, I must be tired from the journey. I'll rest at home for a few days. Mother, you can ask the kitchen to make more delicious food for me to make up for it. Everyone laughed in their hearts when they heard the young master talking to eldest young mistress like this. Wang, however, nodded seriously and said, Of course. You have to rest at home for a few days and don't worry about anything. I'll ask the kitchen to make ginseng black chicken soup for you every day. Add some longans, lotus seeds, and tremella and it'll be the most nourishing. Also, drink a bowl of bloodbird's nest in the morning and in the evening to replenish your qi and blood. Shi Fengju's scalp went numb when he heard this. He couldn't help but smile and agree perfunctorily. Second Lord Shi and the others hurriedly persuaded them to enter the mansion. Thus, a group of people clustered around Wang and walked towards the main courtyard. Once they were seated, Second Lord Shi and his wife knew that their sister-in-law must have a lot to say to Shi Fengju. They only said a few words of greeting and then left together, leaving the mother and son alone to talk in peace. Eldest cousin, you're finally back. Aunt has been so worried about you these days that she refused to listen to anyone's advice. She's been abstaining from meat and praying to Buddha every day. Gu Fengzi sighed softly. Yes, yes. Come, my son, quickly wash your hands and change your clothes. Burn a stick of incense for the Bodhisattva and then go to the ancestral hall to burn incense for the ancestors. It's all thanks to the blessings of the Bodhisattva and the ancestors that my son was able to survive. Wang hurriedly said. Shi Fengju nodded and said, Mother, Wan Yang and I will go back to Ning Garden to change first. Wang then remembered her daughter-in-law who had accompanied her son back. She nodded at Sang Wan and said with a smile, Wan Yang, thank you for taking care of Fengju. You're very good, Mother understands. Quickly change your clothes and we'll pay our respects to the Bodhisattva and the ancestors later. Sang Wan said something along the lines of doing her duty, and agreed before leaving with Shi Fengju. Back in Ning Garden, the master and servant had other things to talk about when they met. Mama Li inevitably had many questions, so she casually answered them. Mama Li also knew that Wang was waiting for them, so she asked someone to help her change her clothes. After hearing that everything was fine, she put down the questions she wanted to ask. After paying their respects to the Bodhisattva and the ancestors, Wang sent Sang Wan back first. She pulled Shi Fengju to look at him from left to right, up and down. She rolled up his sleeves to check his arm and the wound on his leg. Shi Fengju was embarrassed and quickly avoided her gaze with a smile. Mother, the doctor said that I'm really fine. Look, isn't the way I walk the same as before? There's nothing different, right? You don't have to look. In order to prove that he wasn't lying, Shi Fengju immediately walked back and forth in front of Wang twice. Wang looked very carefully and felt that there really wasn't anything different. Only then was she relieved, but she asked again, Then, is there a scar on your leg? Was it serious at the time? Let me take a look, otherwise I'll feel uneasy. Shi Fengju didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought to himself, I'm standing in front of you, so why would you feel uneasy? Seeing her insistence, Shi Fengju couldn't dissuade her. He could only sigh and sit on the couch, resigned to his fate. He took off his shoes, lifted his robe, and rolled up his pants to show his injury to his mother. Previously, he had been using medicine for more than a month, so a large patch of skin on his leg was yellowish-brown from the medicine that hadn't faded away. It set off a hideous scar, which looked terrible to look at. Wang gently stroked it with trembling hands, and tears suddenly gushed out again. This was so painful. My son, how could you be so careless? If something were to happen to you, how am I going to live on? Wang Shi was distressed and annoyed at the same time. She scolded Shi Fengju. Shi Fengju hurriedly comforted her, saying that although the wound looked ugly, the doctor was very skilled, and the medicine he used was very effective. Moreover, it really didn't hurt. He also said that he was still applying the ointment, and that the scar would disappear after a while. Wang's heartache lessened slightly, and she became angry again. She scolded Chong Huan, Steward Zhang, and the others and was about to call them in to teach them a lesson. Shi Fengju persuaded her with great difficulty. Eldest cousin, how did your leg get hurt like this? Gu Fengzi suddenly screamed and rushed in from outside. She bent down and reached out to touch Shi Fengju's leg. Younger cousin. Shi Fengju shouted and hurriedly dodged. He quickly pulled down his pants and pulled down his robe. He frowned, obviously very unhappy. Gu Fengzi was very embarrassed. Her outstretched hand froze in place, and after a while, she slowly withdrew it. She lowered her head and said softly, "I'm sorry, eldest cousin, I'm sorry. I just lost my composure. Seeing you injured like this, half embarrassed, half angry, and half sad, Gu Fengzi sobbed, covered her face, turned around, and ran out." Chapter 236. Feng Er. Wang hurriedly called out, but Gu Fengzi had already rushed out of the door. "You are. Look at how you've frightened her." Wang glared at her son and said, "These days, I'm thankful to have Feng Er accompany me and advise me. But you, instead of thanking her, you're giving her a hard time the moment you come back. How can she not feel embarrassed?" Shi Fengju said, "Mother, I'm naturally grateful to her for accompanying you and advising you, but that's another matter. She's just a girl. I can't accept it." When Wang Shi heard this, she swept her eyes around and instructed Nanny Jiang and the others to leave. Wang Shi then said, "Originally, we could talk about this matter in a few days, but since we've brought it up today, there's no harm in talking about it. Fengju, Feng Er is really a good girl. She's good to this family, good to mother, and even better to you. You don't know how sad she was when something happened to you these days. In front of me, she had to force a smile and advise me, but behind my back, she secretly cried. When I became a vegetarian, she also became a vegetarian. Every morning and evening, she would pray to Bodhisattva to bless your safe return. Fengju, mother has decided to consummate your marriage in a few days. She only has you in her heart and doesn't care about her status. What else are you not satisfied with? I think Wan Yang won't have any objections." Shi Fengju's heart was immediately filled with displeasure. Instead of answering, he asked with a smile that was not a smile, "Mother, since she was crying secretly, how did you know?" "What are you saying?" Wang was startled and scolded him with a smile. "You're already an adult, but you still speak so incoherently." Sometimes, mother feels that I don't understand what you're thinking anymore. In the past, you were unwilling to marry Wan Yang into the family and dragged it out for so many years. Only when you had no other choice did you reluctantly bring her into the family. But now, you're protecting her. Mother doesn't have any other intentions. Mother is naturally happy to see the two of you getting along well. But, what did Feng Er do wrong? You can't leave her behind just because you have Wan Yang. Could it be? Wang said suspiciously, "Did Wan Yang really say something to you behind your back?" "Mother," Shi Fengju said with a wry smile, "how can Wan Yang be that kind of person? Moreover, is your son so indecisive?" "Mother, I have my own reasons for not accepting cousin." "Mother, don't ask any more. Don't get involved in this matter." "No." Wang's face suddenly darkened and she said, "Fengju, as the saying goes, a friend in need is a friend indeed. You treated Feng Er so badly, but when your life was in danger, she was still worried about you wholeheartedly. She cared for you and did so much for the family. Even mother was touched by her feelings for you. How could you do this? What did she do to make you so disgusted? But mother thinks that even if she did something, it must be because she has you in her heart and is afraid of losing you. You can't belittle her because of this." Seeing that her son did not say a word, it was clear that he did not take her words seriously. Feeling angry and helpless, Wang Shi told her son everything that Gu Fengzi had done for the household these past few days. Other things were fine, but there were two things that shocked Shi Fengju. "Mother, what did you say? Cousin got involved in the business of the Shi Ji shipping company?" Shi Fengju was shocked. Although the Shi family had countless fertile lands and innumerable restaurants and shops, the bulk of the business was the shipping business. The Shi family had their own fleet with nearly 200 ships of all sizes. Every year, they would travel between the north and south ends of the canal and the cities along the coast. They also had business dealings with many sea merchants. Every year, the profits earned from this business accounted for half of the Shi family's total profits. Shi Fengju had always been strict with the shipping business. Every year, he would personally travel between the north and south of the canal to check on the problems and solve them. Because Qingzhou was the headquarters of the Shi family and was located at the southernmost end of the canal, the headquarters of the Shi family shipping business was located in Qingzhou. On the Qingzhou pier, half of the territory was occupied by the Shi family. Since the two of them got along well, she had followed him to the pier and knew a lot about the shipping business. She even had a good relationship with many of the stewards. Shi Fengju's heart was filled with raging waves of anger. How dare she? She actually took advantage of him when he had no time to deal with other matters. What do you mean by get involved? It sounds so bad. Wang frowned and said, You took our family's ship when you went out. Whether it's the ship's problem or the people's problem, it's all related to the people in the shipping business. It's a good thing for Feng to help out. It's hard for her to be so considerate. How can you say that about her? Shi Fengju suppressed his anger and said, Did she also say that to you? I think what she said is right. Wang did not deny it. Seeing her son's face getting uglier, she said, Don't blame her for this. If you want to blame someone, blame me. I was the one who called the few stewards of the shipping business over to personally instruct them. If you think that Feng is greedy for power, then you're wrong. She was also hesitant at first because she was afraid that you would misunderstand her when you came back. I patted my chest and promised her, so she didn't have to worry about anything. Every few days, she would tell me about the shipping business. Shi Fengju did not know what to say and hurriedly asked, Mother, did she ask you for any advice? You don't know about business matters, but she didn't say anything, right? Look at what you're saying. Wang said, Your mother doesn't even have this bit of self-awareness? Of course I don't know about business matters, so why would I give any advice? Our Shi family's rules are there, and even our ancestors are watching. I only told Feng to remind them to work hard, to check all the ships regularly to prevent any mistakes, and to train the workers to not panic at critical moments. That's all. That's all? Shi Fengju felt powerless and looked up at the sky. Did his mother know that her few words of, that's all, could lead to countless other things? Gu Fengzi could do a lot of things with just these few words. Although the stewards of the ship's operations were not personally managed by Wang, how could they dare to disobey Wang's wishes? Shi Fengju had no words to describe the anger in his heart. Gu Fengzi, she was really getting more and more capable. Wang was still rambling on, but Shi Fengju could no longer listen to her. He said that he was tired and found an excuse to leave the main courtyard. If this matter made him extremely angry, then there was another matter that he didn't know whether to be happy or worried. In the beginning of the 5th month, Sang Yufei, who had gone to the capital for the imperial examinations, had returned. He came in third in the court examinations, and after returning to his hometown to pay respects to his ancestors, he went to the capital to take up a post in the Hanlin Academy. This was originally a joyous occasion. Needless to say, the Sang family would also gain face for the Shi family. However, who would have thought that the Sang family would be interested in marriage, sending a matchmaker to the Shi family's third Miss Shi Lian as his wife? When Wang heard the matchmaker's words, she was naturally overjoyed. The Sang family did not mind that Shi Lian was a concubine's daughter, and taking in a son-in-law who came in third was also a matter of pride. In her joy, Wang remembered that Shi Lian had been burned in a fire. She personally saw that there were no scars on her legs, and only then did she feel relieved. She then vaguely mentioned the matter of the prefect's son to the Sang family, who knew that the matchmaker seemed to have already known about this matter and said that there was no harm. Only then did Wang truly feel happy. Because Sang Yufei was rushing to the capital, this marriage naturally had to be arranged as soon as possible. As such, the entire household became busy. Shi Lian's husband was the third in the imperial examinations, and he was also an in-law of the Shi family. Wang naturally did not want to be negligent, and ordered that everything be arranged according to the standards of a legitimate daughter. Other than the date of the marriage to be decided after Shi Fengju and his wife returned, everything else had already been prepared, and all of this was in fact arranged by Gu Fengzi. Normally, this matter should not have been up to Gu Fengzi to interfere. As a concubine, it was not right for her to be in charge of the marriage of a young miss of the household. However, the one in charge of this matter was Wang. She was just a person who handled matters, so there was nothing to say. In Gu Fengzi's heart, she was naturally jealous and resentful of this marriage. Shi Lian was just a concubine's daughter, so what right did she have to be married to the third in the imperial examinations? And she, who had been childhood sweethearts with her big cousin, had fallen to the point of being a concubine. And the third in the imperial examinations was Sang Wan's older brother. Gu Fengzi's heart was even more unhappy. Although she was unhappy, Gu Fengzi's expression was happier than anyone else's. She was even more intimate with Shi Lian, and she arranged everything meticulously. She knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yet, this matter had to happen at this time. It could be seen that the heavens were not unkind to her. She did not believe that after putting in so much effort to arrange the marriage for Sang Wan's older brother, Sang Wan would chase her away the moment she returned. As long as she did not harm her own reputation or the Sang family's reputation, she would accept it. She believed that Sang Wan would not do such a thing. For the sake of face, the Sang family would not allow her to do so. Even if her big cousin wanted to send her away, she would have no choice but to persuade him. As a result, Gu Fengzi's days were very comfortable and peaceful, and she did not worry about the issue of where she would end up. What she thought was exactly what Shi Fengju was worried about. He knew that he could not touch her for the time being. At this time, Sang Wan was in Ning Garden. She had heard Mama Li talk about the changes that had happened in the household these past few days, so she also knew about this matter. Sang Wan was shocked and angry, and it took her a while to recover her senses. She was secretly puzzled. Why would her second brother suddenly ask Shi Lian to marry him? She was even more shocked and angry that this marriage was personally arranged by Gu Fengzi. First Madam is very concerned about eldest young master. Although she is very happy about this marriage, how could she have the heart to care about it? Although there are Second Madam and Third Madam in the household, Third young miss is First Madam's daughter. With First Madam present, and First Madam not saying anything, it is not good for them to interfere. Thus, young Miss Biao did it. Mama Li said with a sigh. Sang Wan did not say anything for a while. Did this mean that she owed Gu Fengzi a favor? While her heart was in a mess with Ri Zhong, Gu Fengzi had come with a smile to show her concern and congratulate her older brother on passing the high school. Naturally, she also mentioned this marriage. When Shi Fengju returned, Gu Fengzi finally got up to leave with a smile. Chapter 237. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became subtle and gloomy. Sang Wan's mind was in a mess and she couldn't help but laugh at herself for being greedy. Yes, she was indeed greedy. Thinking back to her previous life, didn't Gu Fengzi also live up to her name as concubine Gu? In this life, she still married into the Shi family and married into Shi Fengju. She also became concubine Gu. How could it be possible for her to get rid of her? Shi Fengju saw that she was silent and his heart felt uncomfortable. He pulled her into the warm room and held her hand. Wan Yang, don't worry. I will definitely do what I promised you. Sang Wan's nose turned sour when she heard that and her eyes became slightly moist. She slowly controlled her emotions and looked at Shi Fengju with a smile. Fengju, let's not talk about this for now. If we talk about this now, what will the whole household think of us? Moreover, even mother won't be able to accept it. Shi Fengju couldn't help but feel irritated and grumbled, if I knew that coming back would be so troublesome, I wouldn't have come back. Sang Wan was amused by his words and laughed. What nonsense are you talking about? Can we not come back for the rest of our lives? Even if we don't come back, this matter won't disappear. Year after year, the older Gu Fengzi got, the more impossible it was for her to leave. Sangwon always knew that Gu Fengzi was difficult to deal with. In her previous life, she had enough of it and didn't want to suffer again in this life. That was why she made such a request to Shi Fengju. But now, it seemed that she had underestimated the situation. Gu Fengzi's endless methods were beyond her imagination. Shi Fengju didn't know that he was speaking in a fit of anger. He smiled and pulled her into his arms before lowering his head to kiss her gently. "Wan Yang, you just have to take care of your body and give birth to a son for me. You don't have to worry about anything else. I won't let you be wronged. If I don't like someone, don't even think about forcing them to my side." Shi Fengju knew that even if Sangwon hadn't said that, he would never tolerate such a scheming woman who schemed against him. After dinner, Shi Fengju stepped into the long-awaited Peony Park. Gu Fengzi and Lan Xiang were delighted to see him. They hurriedly welcomed him in with a smile. Lan Xiang was really happy. She thought that the eldest young master must have seen everything that the young miss had done for him and was moved by the young miss's good intentions. Didn't he just come back from outside to visit the young miss? If it was in the past, who would dare to think of such a thing? Gu Fengzi, on the other hand, had a smile on her face. She was vigilant in her heart. There must be something fishy about this. Eldest cousin must have come with ill intentions. Her aunt didn't know about things that were done under false pretenses, but she couldn't hide it from eldest cousin. Without waiting for Shi Fengju to speak, Gu Fengzi took the initiative to dismiss Lan Xiang. She smiled and went forward to curtsy. "Congratulations, eldest cousin. Eldest cousin's misfortune has turned into good fortune and you've returned safely. This is truly worthy of celebration. It's also a blessing for all of us. We're not outsiders. Cousin, you don't have to be so courteous." Shi Fengju smiled faintly. He casually picked up a chair and sat down. He smiled and said, "It's rare for me to use my illness as an excuse to come back. Cousin, you've worked hard. In the past, I've underestimated you. I didn't know that you were so capable. In less than 2 months, you've managed to deal with everything inside and outside the Fu. I really can't help but admire you." The smile on Gu Fengzi's face froze. She forced a smile and said, "What does eldest cousin mean? Are you blaming me for being meddlesome? I actually didn't want to, but my aunt. Don't use my mother as an excuse." Shi Fengju's tone was still light. He smiled and said, "My mother is easily swayed and doesn't have many thoughts. She's like a bowl of clear water that can be seen through with just a glance. Cousin, you're smart. You've been by my mother's side since young. Don't tell me that you don't know my mother's temperament. Eldest cousin, do you think that I've planned all of this?" Gu Fengzi's eyes gradually welled up with a layer of tears, gradually blurring her vision. She blinked her eyes lightly. 2 drops of clear tears flowed out from her eyes and flowed down her fair cheeks. After passing through the hazy mist, everything in front of her seemed blurry and fragmented, just like her heart at that moment. "I swear, I'm sincerely working for eldest cousin and the Shi family. I have no selfish motives. If eldest cousin suspects me, you can go ahead and check the accounts of the shipping. You can also ask the shopkeepers and stewards to see if I, Gu Fengzi, have taken any personal benefits from this. The reason why I'm involved in this matter is because I know that shipping is the most important part of the Shi family's business. There can't be any mistakes. Eldest cousin, you're recuperating far away. If there's no one watching over you and reminding you at all times, I can't guarantee that the people below won't have any ideas. Big cousin, since you've misunderstood me, I'll go and settle everything tomorrow. I won't touch you again. This way, eldest cousin is willing to believe me, right?" Gu Fengzi's words were full of righteousness and conviction. Anyone who heard it would be touched. However, Shi Fengju only glanced at her disinterestedly and said unhurriedly, "I won't check any of your accounts, and there's no need for me to call the shopkeepers and stewards over to ask them. If I check on you for no reason today, others will naturally think that I'll check on them for no reason tomorrow. You know that I won't do such a thing without evidence." Moreover, the shopkeepers and stewards weren't fools. That account book and business transactions weren't something that you could tamper with. You don't have to explain your thoughts to me. Anyway, it's enough that my mother believes you, isn't it? You don't have to go over tomorrow. I believe that the shopkeepers and stewards will report to me what they need to report. Also, there won't be a next time, do you understand? Gu Fengzi stared at him in disbelief and smiled sadly. Eldest cousin, do you really hate me so much now? Even hate everything I've done? Eldest cousin, what thoughts can I have? My thoughts are all about you. I only want you and only want to spend the rest of my life with you. In the past, you promised that you wouldn't let me down. Why are you now? Gu Fengzi's mouth was filled with bitterness. She turned her face away and sobbed silently. Yes, I've let you down and I regret it. Are you satisfied with what I've said? We have nothing more to say. Why are you so stubborn? Shi Fengju said coldly. Gu Fengzi didn't expect him to be so direct. She was stunned for a moment before she recovered. She gritted her teeth and said, Why? Where did I go wrong? I can change. If sister misunderstood something, I can also explain. Eldest cousin Fengzi. Shi Fengju really wanted to cut open her head to see what was inside. Is there any meaning in being so entangled? You didn't do anything wrong, and it has nothing to do with Wan Nyang. I've said it very clearly. I've changed my mind. Don't use my mother in the future. Don't play tricks in front of my mother. You'll only make me despise you more. Don't be in a hurry to explain. I'm not my mother. It's useless to explain to me. And Wan Nyang, you better stay away from her. If you dare to hurt her, I won't let you off. You're on your own. As long as I don't open my mouth, whatever my mother says will be useless. Shi Fengju glanced at her one last time. He didn't feel the slightest bit of pity or sympathy for her pitiful face full of tears. He shook his head slightly and stepped out of the peony park. Shi Fengju looked up at the sky and let out a long breath. He looked at the starry sky, but his heart still felt depressed and uncomfortable. On one side, there was Gu Fengzi's endless entanglement. On the other side, there was his mother who didn't know the truth and blindly interfered. He really wanted to take Sang Wan away from home and live a few days in peace. Shi Fengju unconsciously returned to the study. He sat alone behind the large desk for a long time. It wasn't until the candlelight in front of him swayed a few times that he came back to his senses. He glanced at the western clock on the corner of the desk and said, "Oh no." He hurriedly got up and returned to Ning Garden. When Shi Fengju returned, Sang Wan had already gone to bed. Xing Ji and a young servant girl, who were on night duty, briskly fetched hot water from the small kitchen to help him wash his face and feet. They then went into the room to rest. The curtains had already been softly lowered. Separated by 2 layers of beads, only the hazy brocade quilt could be seen. Shi Fengju gently lifted the curtains. Sang Wan slightly opened her eyes. "Did I wake you up?" Shi Fengju smiled. He no longer tried to restrain himself and calmly got onto the bed. Sang Wan moved in slightly and shook her head slightly. She said incoherently, "I thought you weren't coming back." Shi Fengju heard her coquettish and resentful voice and hurriedly smiled. I went to the study after that. I wanted to come back after sitting for a while, but I didn't expect that I would forget the time." Both of them were well aware of where he went first. Since Shi Fengju didn't want to say, Sang Wan naturally wouldn't ask either. Sang Wan opened her eyes and stared at Shi Fengju's faintly frowning brows. She suddenly felt helpless. She was too greedy and made things difficult for him. "Fengju," Sang Wan suddenly sat up and said, "seeing you in such a difficult position, forget it. Just take it as if I didn't say anything to you before. Man couldn't win against the heavens. Some things were destined to happen, and some people were destined to be entangled for life. It wasn't something that could be changed by her efforts. For example, when she opened her eyes after being reborn, it was neither too early nor too late, but it happened to be in the Shi family's bridal sedan chair. Under the faint and gentle halo, She raised her eyes slightly and said those words to him. A light blue nightgown wrapped around her body, and her glossy black hair fell from her left shoulder to her chest, making her look even more slender and frail. She was just like her name, so gentle that it made one want to hold her in the palm of his hand and cherish her. Wan Yang, Shi Fengju sighed softly. He reached out and pulled her gently to lean on his body. He said softly, "This has nothing to do with you. Even if you didn't say those words, I wouldn't have tolerated her." Sang Wan remained silent. After a moment she said softly, "Since you've said so, I won't say anything else. Fengju, don't be too hasty in this matter. I'm worried about what might happen." "Don't worry, I'll protect you." Shi Fengju held her hand tightly. Shi Fengju was about to pull her to sleep when Sang Wan suddenly smiled and said, "All right, did Xingji give you some bird's nest just now?" Shi Fengju frowned. "Why would I eat that at night? Quickly go to sleep, it's getting late." "No." Sang Wan broke free from his hand and said with a smile, "Nanny Jiang personally sent it over. She also passed on a message from Mother, saying that you must eat it before sleeping." "How would I know that you would come back so late? Otherwise, I would have sent someone to send it to the study room." "It should be warming up in the small kitchen now. Quickly get up and eat it. Otherwise, if Mother asks about it tomorrow, I won't be able to answer," Sang Wan said and pushed him away. Chapter 238. Shi Fengju helplessly glanced at her and could only shake his head and get up. 2 women, one old and one young, were already enough for him to deal with. Shi Fengju wondered if he had the energy to deal with a third one in this lifetime. Xingji saw the young master come out with his clothes on and suddenly remembered this matter when she heard him mention it. She hurriedly smiled and said, "This servant is also muddle-headed. I actually forgot such an important matter." As she said this, she hurriedly went to the small kitchen to bring out the bowl of bird's nest, bowl, and spoon on a tray and served it to him. Shi Fengju finished it in a few mouthfuls, rinsed his mouth, and returned to his room. Sang Wan was lying on the bed waiting for him. Seeing him, she smiled and said in surprise, "So fast. I say, you should slow down a bit. How can your stomach bear to eat so ravenously like this?" Shi Fengju didn't say anything. He hugged her and fiercely kissed her lips. Panting for breath, he said in a low voice, "So Nagi, be careful or this prince will punish you. Stop fooling around." Sang Wan's cheeks were flushed from his kiss and her eyes were watery. She said angrily, "You don't know how many things you have to do tomorrow. Why aren't you resting?" Shi Fengju smiled and lay down with her in his arms. He said a few flirtatious words and then fell asleep. Too many things had happened when he came back today. At this moment, he didn't have the mood to make a fuss. The next day, Shi Fengju went to the merchant house and met with a few of the main managers in charge of the shipping. He listened to their reports one by one. Occasionally, 2 or 3 people would ask why Miss Gu didn't come. Shi Fengju casually found an excuse and didn't say anything else. He secretly paid attention to the operation of the ship. Everything was in order and there was no difference from when he left. In other words, Gu Fengzi really didn't do anything. Shi Fengju naturally didn't believe Gu Fengzi. He didn't believe that she didn't do anything after asking for his mother's help in a roundabout way. It was too strange. Shi Fengju had no choice but to temporarily suppress his misgivings. After Sang Wan returned from paying her respects to Wang, she picked out a pair of pearls with a picture of 100 infants, a set of gold and jade jewelry, a white jade ruby, and 2 bolts of red and gold embroidered grape brocade. Together with Mama Li, they went to Fu Chu Pavilion to visit Shi Lian and add to her dowry. Mama Li joked, "This is going to be fun. Young mistress, you're both sister-in-law and sister-in-law. When we meet in the future, it'll be really interesting." Sang Wan couldn't help but laugh. She sighed and said, "Exactly. Right now, I'm still sister-in-law. When I return home in the future and see you, I really don't know if I should call you younger sister or sister-in-law." Mama Li smiled and said, I heard that second young master will be going to the capital to take up his post soon. I'm afraid we won't see each other often in the future. When Sang-won heard this, she felt a bit reluctant. She smiled and said, "That's right. Just like our second young master, he won't be able to come back for many years. It'll be difficult to see him again in the future." Second brother had passed the spring examinations. This was originally a joyous occasion. The Sang family could finally hold their heads high. However, it just so happened that he received this news at this moment. His joy was greatly reduced. Mama Lee saw that Sang-won was a bit sad and hurriedly changed the topic with a smile. Sang-won understood her good intentions and smiled. Although Fu Chu Pavilion was still the same Fu Chu Pavilion as before, it was clearly different from before. Even the entrance was decorated with many bright and blooming flowers. It looked very festive. The furnishings and decorations in the room had also been carefully decorated. The curtains had been replaced with smoky multicolored muslin. Apart from Kai-yoon, there were also 4 more beautiful maidservants. They were probably the dowry that the head madam had chosen for Shirlien. When she heard that Sang-won had arrived, Shirlien was also a bit embarrassed. She was a bride-to-be, and was even more embarrassed than Sang-won. As the host, she had no choice but to personally welcome her. When she saw Sang-won, she lowered her head, not daring to raise it. She bowed and said, "Sister-in-law." "Third sister, there's no need to be so courteous." Sang-won smiled and supported her. She was wearing a lilac and orchid embroidered robe, a snow-green round-collared inner garment, and a white skirt with red plum branches. At her waist, there was a silver and blue lawn belt and a white jade doublefish pendant. Her hair was combed into 2 rings, and in addition to the gem-studded hairpins, there was also a beautiful red rose. This dress was much better than her previous simple and low-key appearance. It also made her seem bright and lively. "Sister-in-law, you took care of Big Brother and rushed all the way here, yet you still have time to visit me. It really makes me feel bad." The two of them sat down together, and Shirlien said with a light smile, "Third sister is too polite. I heard about such a happy occasion as soon as I came back, so I should at least come and say, congratulations." "Congratulations, third sister. In the future, we will be even closer. I didn't think that you and our Sang family would have such fate," Sang-won said with a smile. As she spoke, she ordered Mama Lee and the others to bring the gifts over. Shirlien was already blushing with embarrassment. She hurriedly thanked her with a smile and ordered Kai-yoon and the others to take the gifts and put them away. She also ordered the servants to serve tea. Then, she gave them a look and dismissed them. Shirlien said to Sang-won, "Ever since sister-in-law married into our family, she has always taken care of Shirlien. Shirlien has always been grateful. To be able to marry into the Sang family is Shirlien's good fortune." As she spoke, Shirlien was about to stand up and thank Sang-won. "Don't." Sang-won supported her and pulled her to sit down. She half-jokingly said, "Soon, I will have to call you second sister-in-law. How can I feel at ease with you bowing to me like this? Sister-in-law." How could Shirlien endure such teasing? Her face immediately turned so red that she almost couldn't raise her head. After a while, she said softly, "In Shirlien's heart, you will always be my sister-in-law. It is my good fortune that you don't dislike a concubine's daughter like me." Sang-won's heart was filled with tenderness. She gently said, "Don't think like that. Our Sang family is only from the countryside. Although second brother is already in high school, he is still new to politics. I don't know what his future will be like. My second brother is a good person. I only hope that you will be able to share weal and woe with him. He will definitely not let you down. There is also my eldest brother and sister-in-law." Sang-won pondered for a moment before saying, "My eldest brother is an extremely honest person. My sister-in-law, on the other hand, is outspoken and cannot tolerate even a grain of sand in her eyes. After you marry into our family, I hope that you can get along well with them." Shirlien nodded. "Don't worry, sister-in-law. I will." Since I have married into the Sang family, I am the daughter-in-law of the Sang family. Sharing weal and woe with my husband is my duty. I will definitely respect my eldest brother and sister-in-law. Sang-won smiled and said, "You have always had a gentle and kind personality. Kai-yun has been with you for many years and knows you very well. Those few girls from large families are even more arrogant than the young ladies of ordinary families. They are also your maidservants, so I'm afraid that they will have to look at themselves even more highly. Our family is not as ostentatious and extravagant as the Shi family. In my sister-in-law's eyes, what she hates the most is putting on airs. Logically speaking, I shouldn't be the one saying this. I just want to remind you so that you won't have any enmity with my sister-in-law in the future. If you don't understand my intentions, then just pretend that I didn't say anything." Sister-in-law. Shi Lian's eyes couldn't help but redden. She held onto Sang-won's hand and said with a choked voice, "Only sister-in-law would say such things to me. How could I be such a muddle-headed person and blame you for not understanding your good intentions? I also don't find those maidservants pleasing to the eye. Even though they were chosen for me by my mother, they were still chosen by that person from Peony Park. If they are honest, then that's fine. If they dare to be disrespectful to my master, then I won't have to wait until we are halfway to the capital to deal with them." Sang-won only relaxed after hearing her say this. She smiled and said, "It seems that I was worried for nothing. It's good that you know what to do. My sister-in-law is an extremely easy person to get along with. You don't have to worry about anything." Shi Lian hurriedly took the opportunity to ask Sang-won many questions about the Sang family. In order for her to be able to get along well with her brother and sister-in-law in the future, Sang-won wanted to make sure that she didn't do anything wrong. With second uncle and second aunt around, who knew what they would do? If a grudge arose between her and her sister-in-law because of this, then it would be difficult to resolve it in the future. Thus, she told her everything in detail. Shi Lian carefully noted everything down. Since Sang-won had already returned and this marriage was arranged with the Sang family, it was reasonable to leave it to Sang-won to handle. Perhaps Gu Fengzi's heart had been completely broken by Shi Fengju last night, so she fell ill again today. At noon, Wang called Sang-won over and instructed her to take over the wedding arrangements. She gave her several meaningful glances, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Sang-won was calm and wasn't afraid of what she would say. The tiny bit of hope in her heart refused to turn into ashes because of Shi Fengju's words. As for herself, she had already calmly let go. Even if she couldn't let go, what could she do? Previously, when Gu Fengzi took over the wedding arrangements, she originally wanted to ask Mama Li to help. But how could Mama Li be willing to listen to her? She said that she couldn't leave Ning Garden because the young master and young mistress weren't around. She had to keep an eye on Ning Garden and secretly pay attention to this matter. Young mistress, who knows how many tricks are involved in this? This old slave believes that he can easily find out. Do you want the old slave to investigate? Find out that greedy schemer? That way, that vixen won't take advantage of being a good person. Mama Li was eager to give it a try. Among the big families, whenever there was a festive occasion or some kind of important event, it was already a common practice for the stewards and mothers to seek benefits from it. As long as it wasn't too excessive, the masters would turn a blind eye to it and let it pass. Sang-won pondered for a moment, then shook her head and smiled. Hasn't it always been like this? Forget it. It's better to avoid trouble at this time. Mama Li was a little unwilling and said, "That vixen got off too easy. She used the public's money to buy people's hearts. Young mistress, if you don't say a few words, not only will the people below feel lucky, I'm afraid that they'll secretly laugh at young mistress for being muddle-headed." That was true. After thinking about it, Sang-won said, "Since that's the case, you pick up those who took the biggest share and secretly beat them up. Let them know that we're not muddle-headed. They don't need to hand over the benefits in their hands. Mama, Miss Biao tacitly allowed them to take the benefits, but we took it back. Wouldn't that be hateful?" Mama Li slapped her forehead and said with a smile, Old slave has been angered to the point of becoming muddle-headed by that vixen. He actually forgot about this. Young mistress is right. Then let's do it. Leave this matter to the old slave. Sang-won smiled and nodded. In the afternoon, when Shi Fengju came back from outside, he was called over by Wang. Chapter 239. Wang felt extremely uncomfortable. First, she grumbled about how disobedient he was. Why was he in such a hurry to go back to work? Didn't he say that he would rest for a few more days? How could Shi Fengju rest after knowing that Gu Fengzi had interfered? He pointed to the heavens and the earth to assure her that he was fine. Only then did Wang let out a sigh and let it go. She still told him to come back earlier every day. Shi Fengju saw that she had finally let go of the matter and quickly agreed. Wang glanced at him and said, "You went to Peony Park yesterday? What did you say to Feng? She fell ill again today." Shi Fengju was furious. She fell ill just because of a few words from him? How come he had never seen her so delicate before? "Mother, can we not talk about this for now? Maybe she's tired from working so hard these days. How can my words be so effective?" "Listen to what you're saying," Wang said angrily. "Isn't she working so hard for you? You have to let her be at ease so that she can recover faster. You have to give me a definite answer today. When are you going to consummate your marriage with her?" Shi Fengju felt a headache whenever he heard the words Gu Fengzi and consummate. He thought for a moment and said, "Mother, Wan Yong's second brother just came in third. They're preparing for a joyous occasion, but I'm in a hurry to consummate my marriage with a concubine. Isn't this going against the Sang clan and deliberately making them lose face? The Sang brothers both love Wan Yong dearly. How can they not have any thoughts about this? Mother, let's talk about this later. Mother, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first. I'm a bit tired and want to go back and rest." When Wang went to Peony Park today and saw Gu Fengzi's yellow and pitiful face, she had decided to get her disobedient son to tell her the truth. However, when she heard that he was tired and wanted to rest, she couldn't say the words that were stuck in her throat. She waved her hand and sighed. All right. Go back and rest first. Let me tell you, don't think that you can get away with this. You have to think carefully. I'm going to ask you again in a few days. Mother Jiang, if I forget, remember to remind me. Also, did Wan Yong serve you the bird's nest yesterday? Eat. How could Wan Yong forget what you asked her to do? Shi Fengju was a little impatient. He thought to himself that he was already in a bad mood as soon as he came back. He might as well have brought Wan Yong out to play. By the way, Mother, do you want to send someone to bring eldest sister back to stay for a few days? Third sister's marriage is a joyous occasion. Shi Fengju suddenly said. If eldest sister comes back, she'll be able to divert some of Mother's attention away from me. Wang couldn't help but laugh. No wonder I feel like there's something on my mind, but I can't remember what it is. Of course we have to bring your eldest sister back. I'll send someone over tomorrow. I wonder if their family is doing well in Mengxian. Shi Fengju agreed and left. That day, the Shi family sent a message to the Sang family, saying that Shi Fengju and Sang Wan had returned. The next day, the Sang family sent a matchmaker to the Shi family. At the same time, the Shi family set an auspicious date for the wedding, which was the 8th day of the 6th month. There were still 10 days before the wedding. After the date was set, the final preparations for the wedding started to get busy. Purchasing all kinds of mountain products, seafood, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, rice, noodles, and wine, purchasing sweets, fruits, and snacks, checking the tables, chairs, and cutlery for the banquet, inviting the master of ceremonies, preparing the wedding band, preparing the red she character, red silk, and red flowers to be hung throughout the residence, preparing the flowers and bonsai, checking the bride's wedding dress, checking the boxes for the last time to check if there were any mistakes, writing wedding invitations to be distributed to friends and family, and so on. Not only Sang Wan, even second old Mistress She and third old Mistress She were busy. Wang couldn't avoid being lazy and personally went to check the dowry. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the household, the bride, Shi Lian, was the most leisurely one. Looking at the bustling household, Shi Lian's heart was filled with emotions at the thought that it was all for her sake. She had never thought that there would be a day where she could hold her head high and be so proud. She had always been a minor character in the household, not even a supporting role. Who would have thought that she would become the center of attention? As the saying goes, the affairs of the world are impermanent. Unexpectedly, the housekeeper who went to Mengxian to pick up Shi Yumei and her husband came back with an empty carriage. He reported to Wang that the eldest son-in-law and eldest missy were not free and would not be coming. Wang was astonished and hurriedly said, "Not free? Our household is holding such a big wedding. They are the elder sister and brother-in-law, so how could they not come back? What could be more important than this? Did you make it clear?" The housekeeper hurriedly replied, "This servant has made it clear. Eldest missy indeed said so." How could Wang believe him? She blamed the housekeeper for being muddle-headed and not knowing how to do things properly. She waved her hand and dismissed him. Then, she called Shi Fengju over and told him to send someone else. Shi Fengju immediately understood what was going on. He smiled and said, "Since mother is still worried, I'll send someone over tomorrow. However, I think that perhaps they really are not free. Doesn't eldest brother-in-law need to revise his homework? Eldest sister needs to take care of him, so how could she leave? I think that if they really can't come, then forget it." Shi Fengju was actually quite helpless when it came to his eldest sister. The Sang family's second brother-in-law had taken third place in the imperial examinations. If someone like eldest brother-in-law found out, he would probably feel extremely uncomfortable. How could he possibly be willing to come? Eldest sister and third sister had never gotten along well. When she heard that third sister had taken third place in the imperial examinations and was now an official, she would become the wife of an official once she married. How could she, who was so headstrong, be willing to come back and congratulate her? If she saw her relatives and friends and asked about it, she would only feel even more sullen. At that time, when he mentioned to his mother that he wanted to bring his eldest sister back, he knew that it was unlikely to happen. However, Wang didn't think about this. She only said, "Then send someone who knows how to do things tomorrow." No matter how busy your eldest sister and eldest brother-in-law are, how could they not write a letter? I really don't know how these people do things. Shi Fengju smiled and didn't say anything. The next day, he didn't send anyone over. He only brought a brocade box to Wang in the evening. Inside the box was a pair of dragon and phoenix carved gold bracelets. He smiled and said to Wang, "Eldest sister and eldest brother-in-law really don't have time to come. Eldest brother-in-law is working hard at an important point. If it breaks, it will be difficult to reattach it. This pair of gold bracelets is their gift to third sister as a dowry." Wang was finally relieved. She smiled and said, "Their lives aren't easy either. If they have money, they should just keep it for themselves. How could they still remember your third sister? You have to tell her to remember how good her eldest sister and eldest brother-in-law are. In the future, she should help them if she can." Shi Fengju casually agreed and retreated. In the blink of an eye, it was the 8th day of the 6th month. Since last night, the Shi family had been particularly lively. Red silk and satin were hung everywhere, and the huge red lantern at the door didn't go out throughout the night. On the day of the wedding, it was even more lively. Everyone who had some status in Qingzhou City had come. Firstly, it was to strengthen the relationship between the two families. Secondly, the Shi family had recruited a son-in-law who came in third. It was also a matter of pride. Who wouldn't show up to curry favor? Not only did those who received the invitation come, but even those who didn't also came uninvited. Fortunately, the Shi family had already expected this. They had arranged for sufficient servants to guide and serve the bride. At the last moment, many people were transferred from the business and the village to help. Although they were busy, there were no mistakes. They sent the bride out of the door in a lively and joyous manner. After that, a banquet was held in the courtyard and hall that had been arranged in advance. The guests were invited, and it was only when the last batch of guests was sent off in the evening. A few of the housekeepers were busy instructing the servants to clean up, check the items, and deliver the items that were stored in the warehouse. As the person in charge, Sang Wan, along with the entire Ning Garden, was extremely busy. They were busy for 2 whole days before they could barely finish cleaning up. Soon, it was the 3rd day of the wedding for the bride. What Wang and Shi Fengju didn't expect was that on the first day of Shi Lian's return, Shi Yumei actually came back with Cui Zhu. She said that she came back to visit her 3rd sister and 3rd brother-in-law. This caused everyone to be surprised. Wang was naturally happy. That day was another busy day. She ordered the kitchen to prepare the dishes for the banquet at noon. Early in the morning, she ordered the servants to clean up the ancestral hall and prepare incense, candles, paper money, and offerings for their ancestors. At noon, the housekeeper came in to report, "3rd young miss and 3rd young master are back." Shi Fengju, and Sang Wan went out to greet them. When they saw each other, they were naturally affectionate. Sang Wan hadn't seen her second brother for a long time. Now that she finally saw him, her eyes couldn't help but warm up. She went forward and congratulated him with a smile. Sang Yufei also had a lot to say, but he only smiled at her. After a while, he sighed and said, "Because of our matter, we've troubled you, little sister." Sang Wan smiled and said, "Second brother, don't say that. I don't know how happy I am to be able to personally organize such a joyous occasion for you. I really didn't expect to have such good fortune in this lifetime." The few of them laughed when they heard it. Only Shi Lian, who had just married into the family, blushed. She lowered her eyes and pursed her lips as she smiled shyly. As they spoke, everyone went in and arrived at the main courtyard where Wang was. At this moment, Wang, 2nd Lord Shi and his wife, and 3rd Old Master Shi and his wife were already seated in the main hall. Shi Yumei stood behind Wang, surrounded by a house full of servants. When Sang Yufei and Shi Lian came in, everyone greeted each other and took their seats. It was lively again. Then, a servant brought in a tea tray. Sang Yufei and Shi Lian were about to bow and serve tea. Sang Yufei was now an official. Without waiting for him to kneel, Wang raised her hand and said with a smile, "Please don't." She ordered Nanny Jiang to go forward and support him. Shi Yumei, who was standing behind Wang, had been looking at the couple ever since they entered the hall. Everyone in the hall had a joyous smile on their faces. She was the only one who had a calm expression. She looked reserved and calm, but in fact, her heart was so sour that it shrunk. Sang Yufei had a more refined and outstanding temperament compared to the last time she saw him. He was indeed different after making the great leap. Even a common fish had turned into a dragon. She then looked at Shi Lian, who was wearing a bright red robe embroidered with golden peonies, a wide-sleeved gown with 16 patterns of the same color. Her hair was tied up in a bun, and her hair was adorned with bright and luxurious accessories. Shi Yumei felt even more jealous. She couldn't help but secretly blame her mother for agreeing to this marriage. Wasn't she allowing Shi Lian, that wretched girl, to ride on her neck? Her biological daughter couldn't even compare to a concubine's daughter. Did that make her proud? Chapter 240. When she heard Wang instructing Nanny Jiang to help Sang Yufei up, Shi Yumei couldn't help but open her mouth to speak. Who knew that Sang Yufei had already opened his mouth with a smile. He raised his hand to push Nanny Jiang away and knelt down beside Shi Lian in front of Wang. He smiled and said, "This is a family gift, how can it be abandoned? Mother deserves this respect from your son-in-law." Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then they all laughed. Wang Shi was so happy that her face was full of smiles. She kept saying, "Good, good." She happily drank the tea that they offered her and said, "Mother," before giving her a greeting gift. When it was the 2nd Lord Shi and 3rd Old Master Shi's turn, they refused to accept his greeting. Shi Fengju had no choice but to give up after refusing for a while and bowed in his place. After the greeting, they went to the ancestral hall to pay their respects to their ancestors. After that, the second Lord Shi and Shi Fengju invited Sang Yufei to the reception pavilion for a chat. Shi Lian naturally entered the inner chamber to pay her respects to her mother and her two aunts. She recounted in detail how she interacted with her sister-in-law in the Sang household and listened to her mother's teachings. Wang smiled and said, "I didn't expect your life to be so good. You became the wife of an official the moment you married. In the future, you must serve your husband well and be filial to your eldest sister-in-law. Don't embarrass our Shi family. As long as you guys live well, I can rest assured as your mother. In the future, I can also meet your father with confidence." Shi Lian hurriedly stood up and bowed in agreement. Wang didn't have much to say to her. After asking a few questions, she ordered her to return to Fu Chu Pavilion to rest. Seeing Shi Yumei at the side, she smiled at her and said, "Yumei, you don't have anything to do anyway. It'll be difficult for you sisters to meet again in the future. You should send your third sister over." Wang had put a lot of thought into this. She only hoped that Shi Yumei could build a good relationship with Shi Lian, so that in the future, Sang Yufei could help Ran Jixian. Shi Yumei was reluctant at first, but she suddenly thought of something and agreed with a smile. She went out with Shi Lian. Because she knew that Shi Lian was going to rest at Fu Chu Pavilion after returning home 3 days ago, she had already sent people to prepare everything. Everything inside was complete, even the servants who served tea and snacks had been sent over. Shi Lian had nothing to say to Wang, let alone Shi Yumei. When she saw the place, she was thinking of an excuse to ask Shi Yumei to make herself at home. Unexpectedly, Shi Yumei took the initiative to sit down and looked at her with a smile. Shi Lian didn't know what to say, so she hurriedly ordered Kai Yun to serve tea. Shi Yumei dismissed everyone and looked at Shi Lian from head to toe. She smiled and said, "Third sister, are you used to living in the Sang family? How are the people in their family? Do they treat you well?" Shi Lian heard that her question was a little out of place and felt a little unhappy. She smiled and said, "Big brother and sister-in-law are both very easy to get along with. They treat me well." "I think so too." Shi Yumei sighed softly and said carelessly, "For a family like theirs to be able to marry a young lady from a family like ours, who knows how many lifetimes of good fortune they have accumulated. How could it not be good? I'm afraid that even our family's servant girl knows the rules better than them and is more knowledgeable. When they see our family's extravagance, they'll definitely worship you like a fairy. Aya, third sister, you really have a good life. Marrying into a small family, you won't have to suffer. Although your life is a little hard, it's actually quite good." "That's right. What dowry did mother give you? There should be a lot of fertile land, right? The Sang family has really made a fortune this time. Where else can you find such a good marriage?" Shi Lian suddenly felt as if she had swallowed a fly. Everyone in the Sang family treated her as a family member. Her sister-in-law was very close to her, and her nephews and nieces also called her second aunt, affectionately with smiles. In the depths of her heart, she had already treated them as her family. Hearing Shi Yumei's words was especially grating. Shi Lian tried to restrain herself, but in the end, she didn't say anything sarcastic. She only smiled vaguely. It wasn't that she didn't want to or didn't dare to, but that she couldn't. She had married into a better family than Shi Yumei, so it was normal for Shi Yumei to be jealous. Today was a big day for returning home, and Shi Yumei was used to being arrogant and overbearing. She definitely didn't know what it meant to keep the peace. If she didn't agree with her, she would definitely take the opportunity to make a big fuss. When that happened, it wouldn't look good on everyone's faces. Why bother? Who knew that even though she didn't answer, Shi Yumei wouldn't let her go? She continued to ask with a smile, "Third sister, tell me, is what I said reasonable? Is it like what I said? AI, that Sang family really knows how to scheme. You've always been an honest person, so you have to take out some money in the future. Don't ruin our Shi family's reputation and let others look down on us. I've heard that the Sang family's sister-in-law is a person with a sharp tongue. That country bumpkin, if you were to be controlled by her, it would really be embarrassing." "Big sister, Shirlien heard that her words were getting more and more out of hand, so she smiled and said softly, "Since ancient times, a married woman has to follow her husband. I don't have as much knowledge as big sister. I only know how to serve my husband and be filial to my brother and sister-in-law. I don't dare to listen to big sister's words. That's why I said you're an honest person." Sure you may snorted, "Just take out some money as a young miss. What can they do to you? Our young miss marrying into their family is their gain, isn't it? Don't tell me you don't feel wronged? Don't you feel that you're marrying beneath yourself?" Shirlien said, "Marrying a chicken follows the chicken, marrying a dog follows the dog. Shirlien's marriage will be arranged by mother. No matter what, Shirlien is willing." Shirlien's intention was to express that she didn't have any thoughts about this marriage and to ask her to stop talking about it. She had completely accepted the reality, so whatever she said would be useless. Unexpectedly, Shirlien sighed softly and said with pity, "Third sister, you even said something like, marrying a chicken follows the chicken, marrying a dog follows the dog. Look at how wronged you are. You really are an honest person. If you don't want this marriage, why didn't you say so earlier? Even if you're too embarrassed to tell mother, you can write a letter to me. I'll definitely help you make the decision." Before Shirlien could finish her words, Sangwon came in with Luya. Shirlien's face suddenly turned pale. Shirlien secretly praised her. She pretended not to see Sangwon and continued to speak to Shirlien in a pitying tone. "Alas, now that the rice has been cooked, it's too late for you to regret it. What should we do? You should be more open-minded in the future. If you don't want to go to the capital to suffer, why don't I talk to mother? You can say that mother can't bear to part with you and wants you to stay at home for a while." "Big sister." Shirlien was so anxious that tears almost jumped out of her eyes. Before Shirlien could finish, she quickly interrupted her. "When did I mean that or say that? Big sister, don't misunderstand. I never meant that. Hey, we're not outsiders. You don't have to hide anything in front of me." Shirlien acted like a caring big sister. Shirlien was so anxious that she couldn't explain herself. Then, she pretended to inadvertently glance at the door and abruptly stopped what she wanted to say. She smiled and said, "Oh, sister-in-law, you're here. Hee hee, you just arrived, right? Big sister, third sister." Sangwon came in with a smile and said, "I came to see third sister. I didn't expect big sister to be here too." Shirlien stood up and said with a smile, "Then you can talk first. I'm going to mother. Big sister, take care." Sangwon nodded with a smile. "Sister-in-law, Shirlien stood up in a hurry. "Third sister." Sangwon held her hand and squeezed it slightly. "Between you and me, there's no need to explain. How could I not know what kind of person you are? Sister-in-law, you really believe me?" Shirlien was surprised and happy. She stared nervously at Sangwon with tears in her eyes. Sangwon sighed inwardly. Some people just couldn't bear to see others living better than her. It wasn't right for others to live better than her. She only felt better when she provoked others. "Of course." Sangwon nodded with a smile. "If I didn't even know this, then I wouldn't have known you. If you really looked down on our family, you wouldn't have asked me about this before you got married." "Sister-in-law. Thank you." Shirlien blinked and turned her face away. She hurriedly invited Sangwon to sit down with a smile and ordered her to serve tea. Then, she lifted her handkerchief to wipe her eyes. Eldest sister was too crafty and vicious, seizing on the loophole in her words, twisting words and forcing logic, and rudely adding on. Her twisted logic was clear and logical. If eldest sister-in-law had any ideas in her heart because of this, she would mention it to her maternal family. Her future days were destined to be sullen. Although her husband had feelings for her, she knew very well how much he respected his big brother and sister-in-law, and how much he cherished his family. Sangwon smiled and skipped the topic. She asked her with a smile, "Have you gotten used to it these few days? My big brother and sister-in-law are very easy to get along with. I didn't lie to you, did I? Shi Lian nodded with a smile. Speaking of her husband's family, her eyes became gentle and her lips couldn't help but curl into a smile. She then told Sang Won about it. Of course, there were also discordant notes, which were the 3 maidservants other than Kai Yun. However, servants were still servants in the end. Even after entering the Sang household, they still treated themselves as if they were the head maidservants of the Shi household. Their fates were not any better. Shi Lian did not mention these troublesome matters to Sang Won. When Sang Won heard that she got along well with her brother and sister-in-law's family, she was completely relieved. Sister-in-law was a good person, but not everyone could tolerate her temper. Shi Lian's temperament was gentle and she didn't have the style of a young lady from a noble family. If second brother were to marry a proper daughter of a wealthy family or a young miss of an official's family, she was afraid that the situation would be completely different. That's right, did second uncle and second aunt cause trouble for you? Thinking of Ryo Kuwabara and his wife, Sang Won asked. Shi Lian was a new daughter-in-law. It was not convenient for Fong Fong to tell her about the messy affairs of the first and second branches of the Sang family. However, if her second aunt tried to sow discord and Shi Lian did it without knowing the situation, Fong Fong would definitely be unhappy. Therefore, Sang Won felt that it was necessary to tell her about the history of the 2 branches. No. Shi Lian shook her head. After a moment of hesitation, she said, "What about second uncle and second aunt?" My husband also mentioned to me a few times about them. He said that I should listen to sister-in-law and let her make the decision. She then smiled and said, "In any case, we will be going to the capital soon. I'm afraid that we won't have the chance to see them." Chapter 241. Sang Yufei naturally wouldn't speak ill of his elders in front of his newly married wife, but Shi Lian wasn't stupid either. She could easily tell that her husband's family and second uncle's family had a grudge against each other. Her eldest brother was so honest, and her husband was also a gentleman. From her point of view, no matter what happened in the past, second uncle's family was definitely in the wrong. Sang Yufei found it hard to talk about this matter, but he didn't know that Shi Lian had seen it before. Cousin Gu and her father, as well as her eldest sister and her husband, were all living examples. The Sang family also had their own problems, so in her eyes, it was normal. Sang Won smiled and said, "That's good. Sister-in-law knows about these matters. Let her speak out to save you from being taken advantage of." She then asked curiously, "Based on what you said earlier, could it be that you haven't met them?" "That's impossible." Although the 2 families had severed ties on the surface, it was impossible for Ryo Kuwabara and his wife not to join in on such a joyous occasion like Sang Yufei's wedding. The Sang brothers, including Fong, couldn't possibly chase them out of the door. Could it be that they really had a complete change of heart? Or did something happen later on that caused the relationship between the 2 families to completely sever? Sang Won's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She suddenly remembered the letter she wrote to her eldest brother and sister-in-law after Li came to visit. Could it be that sister-in-law had used that letter to teach them a lesson? If that was the case, then she... That's right. Shi Lian didn't know what Sang Won was thinking at that moment. She smiled and said, "They weren't home when we got married. I heard from sister-in-law that they left the village a month ago. I don't know where they went. Right now, there are only 2 cousins left in their family." Shi Lian couldn't help but recall what Fong had said at that time. "Sister-in-law, you're lucky. On your wedding day, those 2 troublemakers weren't there. Otherwise, it would have been very lively." There were also his 2 cousins. Sang Yen was well behaved, but Sang Ro was a little too enthusiastic, always wanting to rub against him. "There's such a thing." Sang Won was shocked and hurriedly said, "Big brother and sister-in-law, do you know where they went? What would make them leave their homes?" Li loved Sang Yen so much, but he was willing to abandon her and go with Ryo Kuwabara. This matter was strange no matter how one looked at it. Shi Lian shook her head. Sister-in-law didn't mention it. Sang Won replied with an "oh," and didn't ask any more questions. Shi Lian didn't know much about the Sang family, so she decided to ask her second brother when she had the chance. The two of them chatted for a while more before a maidservant came to inform them that it was time to eat. The two of them hurriedly got up with smiles on their faces and headed towards the main courtyard. Since they were all from the same family, there wasn't much to be said. There were 2 tables in the main hall for men and women to sit at. At the table, other than Shi Yumei, who was eating with a straight face and didn't pay attention to anyone else, the atmosphere was quite good. The meal ended in a lively atmosphere. As usual, they couldn't spend the night after returning home. Seeing that it was getting late, Wang didn't ask them to stay any longer. She only smiled and reminded them to stay for a few days before leaving when they went to the capital. Sang Yufei and Shi Lian both agreed. Wang then taught Shi Lian a few things. It was nothing more than the 3 obediences and 4 virtues, as well as being a good wife and educating children. Shi Lian agreed to them one by one. Who knew that Shi Yumei would suddenly say with a smile, "Third sister, don't just agree. Remember to keep it in your heart. Third brother-in-law is an official, so his reputation is the most important. Third sister, you have to be virtuous. Remember to arrange for a few beautiful concubines who are skilled in calligraphy and painting for third brother-in-law. In the future, when third brother-in-law goes out to entertain his colleagues, he will have face if he brings them out to serve him." Shi Yumei giggled as she spoke, but the people around them looked at each other in dismay. The new daughter-in-law returned home 3 times, but the biological sister didn't wish her younger sister and brother-in-law to grow old together and treat each other with respect. Instead, she kept talking about beautiful concubines. How could there be such a sister in the world? Shi Lian didn't know whether to agree or not. Her face flushed red for a moment. Shi Yumei didn't let her go. Instead, she took it a step further and said with a smile, "Third sister, do you remember? Third sister, don't say anything. Could it be that you don't agree with eldest sister and want to be a jealous woman?" "Yumei." Wang finally couldn't listen to her anymore. She said angrily, "What nonsense are you talking about? How can your third sister be a jealous woman?" Sang Yufei smiled faintly and said, "Mother-in-law is right. The daughter you teach is naturally virtuous. How can I be a jealous woman? Yufei appreciates eldest sister's kind guidance. However, there are so many scholars in this world. Not all of them are like eldest brother-in-law, who likes beautiful concubines to serve him. Yufei has a virtuous wife. Thank you for your concern, eldest sister." Shi Yumei's chest tightened as she glared angrily at Sang Yufei. Shi Lian's gaze shifted slightly as she met her husband's gaze. However, her heart was filled with joy as it rippled in circles. She knew that she didn't misjudge him. The most correct thing she had done in her life was to take a fancy to him and marry him. It's getting late. "Mother, let my second brother and the others go back quickly. Otherwise, it will be dark before they get home." Sang Wan saw that the situation was a bit awkward and hurriedly came forward with a smile. "That's good too." Wang nodded and smiled. She instructed Shi Fengju and Sang Wan to see them off properly. She also smiled and said that there would be plenty of time in the future. When they passed by in the capital, they must visit the residence. Thus, the two sides said goodbye and went their separate ways. Taking advantage of the time to see them off, Sang Wan secretly gave Sang Yufei a look. The 2 siblings talked for a while. Sang Wan then asked him about second uncle and second aunt leaving home. Sang Yufei frowned slightly and said, "I also feel that this matter is a bit strange. I heard eldest sister-in-law say that someone came to pick them up. I don't know what they said, but the next day, second uncle and second aunt happily followed that person with the new concubine. Someone in the village saw them and asked about it. Second uncle said that they were going to make a fortune, but he was interrupted by the person who came to pick them up. No one else in the village knows about this matter." Sang Wan said, "Make a fortune?" No wonder second uncle and second aunt were persuaded. However, they weren't stupid. How could they be so easily tricked by someone? Since they happily followed that person, It meant that that person must have a reason that they had to believe. Who could it be? This matter has nothing to do with our family. They aren't children who don't know anything. Since they trust that person, they must have a trustworthy reason. Why should we worry about it? Look at how much weight you've lost. Now that brother-in-law has returned safely, you have to take good care of your body. Don't tire yourself out too much. If you have any difficulties, don't hesitate to tell your older brother. Don't treat your older brother as an outsider. Sang Yufei looked at her with a gentle smile. In the past, he couldn't protect her. Now that he had the title of chief steward, if she needed it, he wouldn't hesitate to do anything for her. Speaking of which, the two of them were living under someone else's roof, in front of their eldest brother and eldest sister-in-law. In the days when they didn't have parents, they were truly in the same boat. Although their eldest brother and sister-in-law were also relatives, they didn't have the obligation to raise and take care of them. At that time, he was desperately studying, and she was trying her best to reduce her presence. She didn't want to add any trouble to the family. In terms of intimacy, the two of them were closer than the two of them. Sang-won was moved. She nodded with a smile and said, "Second brother can rest assured. If there's anything I need to trouble second brother, I won't be polite with second brother. As long as second brother and his wife have a harmonious relationship, I'll be satisfied." Sang Yufei's eyes couldn't help revealing a gentle look. With a smile, he said, "You and brother-in-law have to be well. When you have news in your stomach, don't forget to write a letter to tell your second brother. Let your second brother be happy for you." Second brother. Sang-won's face turned red. She lowered her eyes and forced out a smile. Sang Yufei saw her tender smile and didn't mention it again. The carriage was already prepared, so he got in the carriage with Shi Lian. The two sides said their goodbyes and left. A long time after the carriage left, Sang-won was still looking forward in a daze. She suddenly let out a low sigh and felt a sense of loss. A low chuckle came from beside her. Sang-won turned her head and looked at the man beside her. "Let's go back. This important matter has been smoothly completed. You've been tired these past few days, so you should have a good rest." Shi Fengju looked at her sharp little face and felt a bit of heartache. First she took care of him on the way back, and then this important matter. These past few days, she often slept in the middle of the night and fell asleep as soon as her head hit the pillow. He didn't even have the heart to turn over in fear of waking her up. Sang-won smiled at him. "You've also been tired these past few days. There's no rush in the business, so let the shopkeepers take care of it. Mother told me to take good care of you." Shi Fengju smiled and then whispered something into her ear that made Sang-won laugh. She looked at him angrily and wanted to say something, but she held back. She only smiled and said, "Let's go back." Then she went back with him. The two of them first went to report to Wang before returning to Ning Garden. After entering the warm room, Shi Fengju raised his hand to stop the people following them. Before Sang-won could react, he picked her up. What are you doing?" Sang-won was shocked and almost cried out. "I'm carrying you." Shi Fengju smiled and said, "You're tired, so rest well. I'll take care of you today, so you don't have to worry about anything." As he spoke, he walked over to the Kong bed and put Sang-won down. He then squatted down and gently removed her shoes. He helped her lie down and said with a smile, "Lie down for a while. Let's talk." Sang-won saw that he was in high spirits and didn't want to dampen his spirits. She smiled and lay down, covering herself with a thin blanket. Just as she closed her eyes in comfort, Shi Fengju smiled and pushed her again. "Hey, move in a bit and leave some space for me. I'll lie down with you." Sang-won had no choice but to move further inside and grumble, "You told me to have a good rest, yet here you are, making a fuss." "I'm staying with you. How is that making trouble?" Shi Fengju smiled and unceremoniously pulled the thin blanket to cover himself. He turned to face her and put his arm around her waist, pulling her into his arms. "Don't worry and sleep. I told you not to disturb me. If there's anything, Mama Lee and the others will take care of it." Sang-won mumbled an N and leaned into his arms. She was wrapped in his familiar scent. After a while, she really did fall asleep. When Sang-won woke up, the light in the room had become hazy and there were shadows in the room. She was shocked and quickly sat up, saying, "What time is it?" You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.